You to the Thursday, August 28th regular session, Public Utilities Advisory Board meeting. This is our fifth meeting this year. My name is Lou Halkias. I'm the chair of the board and will be conducting the meeting today. Before we begin, for the benefit of citizens and people listening to this meeting and those attending or viewing video programming, which we don't have video, I guess I thought we did with the video.
Just audio.
This audio, yes. I'd like to request the members of this board, including our two new members, which is one member right now. And do we have any student representatives? No student representatives here. To briefly describe their background that relates to the mission of PUAB, so at least people have an idea who we are. And since we have new people. So if we could start, Phil, just start on that end and we'll end up over here.
Sure. My name is Phil Schreiber. I've got 25 years of experience in consulting engineering, working in power plants, and then most recently the last 10 to 15 years working in clean tech across all the kinds of distributed energy, renewables, traditional fossil supply, and advising and helping some of the largest customers in the world manage their forward contracts and how they buy energy, how they manage energy across their global portfolios.
Good evening. My name is Rupa Natarajan. Just a little bit of background. I've been a Naperville resident for about 30 years. I've got a chemical engineering degree from Purdue. I spent 33 years in the energy industry where I had several roles. I had roles in logistics, strategic planning, long-term planning, and also large-scale capital projects, and also had a lot of involvement with large utility infrastructure projects. And I'm hoping that that experience can help out here as a member of the PUAB. I'm one of the new members here. Thank you.
Roger, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm a little late.
No, you're not.
So I'm Roger Blomquist. I'm a retired nuclear engineer from Argonne National Laboratory. I was a physics major in undergraduate school. The Navy turned me into a nuclear engineer. I was a nuclear propulsion officer on a U.S. Navy submarine. Went through overhaul, which is a very industrial process. Then I went back to graduate school and moved to Argonne. I worked in reactor physics during most of my career. And I've been following kind of energy policy type issues for a long time. And I see this as an opportunity to serve the town I've lived in since 1987.
Jim Fuller, 34-year resident of Naperville, chemical engineer, University of Minnesota, master's of business, University of Chicago. Spent 41 years in the energy industry, primarily doing commercial contracts, and power procurement was something that I did for about the last 15 years. So I tried to bring that knowledge to the table here for the PUAB.
Yes. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Bob Nielaverty, and I'm a senior at school and student representatives.
Thanks. Thank you for participating. My name is Lou Halkias. I'm a 32-year federal law enforcement officer. 22 of that was with EPA, enforcing environmental criminal law. And I've been a resident of Naperville for 40 plus years. And I just like giving back to this city. I love the city, and anything we could do to keep it the way it is great with me. So, Mayor, if you'd like to, we almost kind of did this for you already, but if you could do the roll call.
Yeah, we have to do it.
Yes.
Yes. Louis Halkias.
Speaking here.
James Fuller.
Here.
Roger Blomquist.
Here.
Ruba.
Here.
I'm having a hard
That's all right. Not a rush.
Okay. Phil Schreiber.
Here.
Abbas is not here. Michelle Ackman is not here. Hans Roder is not here. And Bhavani Galavati is here.
Okay, very good. Next will be the public forum. Do we have any public
Yes.
forum people?
I have Daniel Bully for the grid reliability and pricing.
Okay, just before we start, just to make sure, because you never know, Things happen. I have to go through this little, because we have our attorney here. Sure.
Dotting i's, crossing
Cross every T. Speakers will be called in the order that they sign up. If anyone was unable to sign up, they could speak at the end of the public forum. If you didn't sign up but would like to do so, please raise your hand so we can get your name and add it to the list. At the conclusion of the public forum will be old business. As we start the public forum, I'd like to remind everyone of the citizen participation rules in the city's municipal code for speaking at meetings. Speakers will be called on to speak in the order they signed up on the sign-up sheet. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make their comments. Speakers are asked to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Speakers should stay on topic and be cognizant of their words. Personal attacks on board members, staff, and other speakers or members of the audience are not allowed. If inappropriate language or comments are expressed during this meeting, you will be asked immediately to stop commenting. Also, for audience members, there's no cheering or jeering. Actions such as applauding, cheering, or booing during or at the conclusion of any remarks made by any speaker are not allowed. So now if you would please call the first.
Daniel Bully for grid reliability and pricing.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Bully. I want to throw something out there just to kind of test my own thinking. At the last council meeting, I made a statement about the fact that nothing that Naperville does or doesn't do is going to affect the amount of CO2 put out by the coal plants. And I didn't actually have time to get into the details, and I wasn't even going to try to until Councilman Kelly brought up the fact that, and it made something click in my mind, that no matter what happens, what power plants are operating, just because we buy power from Prairie State doesn't mean we're going to have power and Lyle isn't. I just through circumstance, I happen to have been familiar with the electric grid pretty much most of my life. And because that, I actually made a little critical thinking exercise. I'm not going to read it all for you, but I'm just going to put this out there. And if there's something I'm saying wrong, I appreciate someone correcting me. But I believe our electric grid in this country was created in the 30s. It was split up into regions, and we were originally in the main region, which stood for Mid-America Interconnected Network. And the entire system was set up for reliability. Someone made what I think a poor decision a few years back and decided they wanted to monetize generation of electricity. And they changed Maine to MISO, and then PECO bought or merged with ComEd, and they petitioned to join PJM, although technically geographically we're actually in the MISO. But through all that, nothing has changed. The grid operator for us, PJM, operates the grid for reliability only. They were never really created to sell electricity. That was artificially put on there. But my point being that, and I made this comment last time and I got some funny looks, but it doesn't matter. All the electricity that is made in the region is shared by everybody. We don't actually use more coal than anybody else. So when someone says, oh, we're using more coal, technically we aren't. We paid for coal because someone put an artificial construct on top of the reliability electric grid program and made us make a choice. And we made our choice. We made our $650 million investment. And yes, we could say, well, we don't want to continue with that investment, which I think would be foolish. But is there anything technically wrong with my argument? I guess that's what I'm asking. Can someone tell me that? Do we use more coal than Lyle? And I think the answer is no, ever. Is there any? I guess that's my comment, and I appreciate your time.
Are we allowed to comment on that? I think there's a section for
Thank you. I think a
public
little bit,
comment for after everybody goes, right?
yes, yeah. After we go through, then we can question each one of the speakers. Thank you.
That's it. Oh, okay.
Oh,
There we go.
okay. Sooner than we thought.
That's it?
That's it.
Now we're there. I guess,
So you can ask a question. Are there any questions from the board?
are we allowed to respond to his question, or does it have to?
Oh, yeah, you're a board member. You can say whatever.
Okay. I was gonna throw the thought out there. You're asking about, does the city consume any more coal? I don't think that's the way to look at it. I think the way to look at it is to look at follow the money trail and whatever your financial contracts are associated with, is that's how you would make some attribution to the type of fuel that you're using. And that's really what it boils down to, because to your point, the electrons don't flow from a certain power plant into Naperville. They go into a grid. So that electrons that the city of Naperville is actually consuming probably don't even come from MISO. They probably come from
PJM.
generation. Well, yeah, but there's a contract with that plant, right? So I think people have this misconstruement that we're buying actual electrons from a plant that we're in contract or have an ownership structure, and that's not actually how the grid works. So the only way to make some attribution about the amount of contribution to a certain type of fuel that's being consumed and in carbon, we'd have to go by the contractual.
But I'm saying that's an artificial layer on top of the reliability system. It doesn't affect the way the systems are. And I'm also saying that, yeah, there's nothing we could actually do that would change. There's nothing Naperville could do to change the amount of coal being burned at that plant. Right. Either plant. The only ones that could do that would be the state of Illinois, state of Kentucky, board of directors of either plant. And that's the point I'm making, that when someone says, oh, we're using more coal, it's incorrect. And I'd like to see someone correct them. But that's all I'm saying, because I think that's dishonest to say we're using more coal. And not just from the point of we're not using those electrons, but the system is administered only from a state of reliability. The cost structure was put on there artificially and wrongly. I was actually one of the people that fought deregulation back in the day. And I think that it's a very important distinction that if it ever comes up again, I'd like to see somebody to point that out or tell me that I'm wrong. I actually created a critical thinking exercise, which I'm going to see get some, put around somewhere. But if anybody wants to see it, I'd be happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, okay. We're done with the public forum. The next thing will be old business. And we will approve the Public Utilities Advisory Board special meetings of May 29th, 2025. So I assume everybody's had a chance to review those minutes. Do I have a motion to correct those minutes? Do I hear a motion of those who?
I motion to accept.
To accept. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have a discussion on this? No discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Accepted that. Thank you. Now we have new business. Agenda. And with the new business, we have 3 received boards and commissions member training. That's the first one. And then we have received non-core gas presentation, and then received the electric utilities load shed plan. And it's set up first to have the training first. So you're okay with that?
I'm great with that if you are.
Okay, fine. Okay,
Can I proceed?
it's your show.
Do you mind if I stand?
Please.
Okay, wonderful. I'll pass my business card out if you wouldn't mind passing those out. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike DeSanto. I serve as the city attorney here for the city of Naperville. A little of my background, just so you know who you're hearing from. I grew up in Naperville. I went to Naperville North High School and have been blessed to work here for the city for 18 years. I've served 9 years as the city attorney. We have an in-house legal staff of 8 attorneys. We work up on the west wing of this building, and we provide for almost all the city's legal needs. And that includes support for our boards and commissions as well as to our city council. And so we're going through and providing some training to all of our boards and commissions. So I don't want this board to think that they've done anything wrong. This is going to all the boards and commissions. You're not the only one who are going to be hearing this. If you have any questions while I'm presenting, please feel free to make this conversational. But I do have 28 slides to cover, so I'll try to move. My apologies to our friends from Nightcore, and I appreciate them letting me go first, and hopefully we don't bore them too much. So we're going to talk about the importance of boards and commissions. We're going to talk about responsibilities, and we're going to talk about meeting rules and participation. I want to start off with the importance of boards and commissions. You are very important and you are very critical to the operations of the city of Naperville. You may or may not know this, but a lot of what's been happening with the boards and commissions, and there has been a lot happening, is a result of Mayor Worley. Mayor Worley served on boards and commissions for 30 years before being elected mayor. He served on the Liquor Commission for 30 years. And over the 18 years that I've been here, I've had the privilege of working with 3 different mayors. He has a unique perspective on boards and commissions. And so one of the things that he really challenged us with early on was how are we amplifying our boards and commissions, how are we modernizing them, and how are we standardizing their processes. And for the first 2 years of his administration, we've been very active in doing so, and this training is a result of that. Right now with this city, I believe we have over 20 boards and commissions and 150 volunteers on those boards and commissions, and so it's significant. They provide just a really important role to the city. It is a large city. As you may know, Naperville recently passed Joliet. We're now the 3rd largest city in the state of Illinois. We have a lot of different functions, even amongst cities. Not every city has an in-house fire department. Very few cities have an in-house electric department. And so we do a lot with that. It makes the city quite complex. And it's a lot for our city council to handle when they meet twice a month. And so a lot of the vetting, a lot of the discussion, a lot of the analysis of the really important issues is done at the board and commission level amongst our 20 boards and commissions. And so you play a very important role, particularly for the utilities. Something else I think is really important about why boards and commissions are so important. From my perspective, having worked with the public officials who are elected for a long time, they come in with a variety of different backgrounds. They put themselves out there as a member of the community, they gain support, and they join the board to provide the oversight that is essential to the staff here at the city. But not all of them have specialized expertise in the wide variety of issues that they are tackling. And man, was I appreciating the backgrounds that I heard as you all introduced yourselves. It provides exactly what we need and especially in this community, we have so many gifted and talented people that we can provide boards and commissions where people have specialized expertise to really weigh in on these really critical issues in a way that perhaps the council may not always have in every issue. And so they rely a lot on the advisory role of the boards and commissions. You're the voice of the community for policy development, decision-making. You got unique experiences. We try to leverage that. Really a channel between residents and elected officials. I appreciate Mr. Bully being here. I understand that he can talk to the board here and get some feedback, and you guys can kind of push that up to the council. It really assists staff in vetting a lot of issues that need to be vetted and getting input on that. So these are all the important roles and really increasing consistency in community and planning and discussions. Let's talk a little bit about the responsibilities. Members are expected to arrive on time. You guys did a fantastic job, prepared for it. Agendas come out in advance. We hope that you have an opportunity to read those and come in prepared. That's the expectation. And then participate. Everybody has a voice and you're here for a reason. You've been chosen by the mayor. You've been approved by the council. And so I hope you carry that responsibility well. Boards and commissions. Now, this is something that we have gotten more serious with over time. The expectation is that you make 75% of the meetings. At times, there's been some attendance issues at some boards and commissions, and the city has been focused on improving that, and it's going really well. But there is reporting done on attendance. We'll talk a little bit about that. And if you fall beneath that 75%, typically you'll get a call from maybe the mayor saying, hey, are you really interested in serving on this? Has something changed in your circumstances which makes this difficult? Because if so, we can find somebody else. So just be aware of that and understand that that is something that we're trying to standardize amongst all our boards and commissions. Excused absences are different, and that's for any type of emergency and unforeseen circumstance. We're understanding about that, so be aware. Again, it's reviewed, and if you have anything that you need, you have wonderful liaisons who are very experienced around here. Please reach out, keep those lines of communication open. Terms and term limits. Boards and commission terms are 3 years, and they're limited to 2 terms. A question that I get sometimes is, can I serve on multiple boards and commissions? I have skill sets that could fit into a bunch of different places, and that's not allowed. The municipal code limits service to a single board and commission. Now, you can serve 2 3-year terms on one and then go immediately and serve on another one, but you can't do them consecutive or simultaneously. Terms expire on May 30th. There are some exceptions about when there's vacancies. People can be asked to stay a little bit longer if we need to fill a vacancy, and we'll talk to you about that if that comes up. The Liquor Commission is unique. Sometimes people point at the Liquor Commission and like, hey, wait, they're not doing what we're doing. The Liquor Commission is a unique body in that they don't really have to exist. They kind of serve at the a privilege and at the call of the mayor. They're an advisory board directly to the mayor in his role as Liquor Commissioner. So if you ever see anything there and you wonder why it's a little bit different, you can remember I told you that that's how the statute's drawn. Reappointments. This is the process for reappointments. Is anybody's first meeting today? Oh, you too. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. That's wonderful. I'm glad to be here, part of that. That's cool. So, and 3 years from now, you'll be invited to consider reappointment. It's a 3-year commitment. We take that 3 years at a time. And so when that comes up, they'll ask you if you're interested. If your attendance is low, there'll be a discussion about that. And then ultimately, recommendations for reappointment go to the city council. For your initial appointment, I believe they circulate resumes to the city council along with the names. And then at reappointments, we don't circulate the resumes. We just submit the names. People are familiar with you by that point. All right, ethics and code of conduct. This is important. This is the stuff I think I'm really here for, to talk about kind of the rules that regulate our public officials. And that's really important to know. I think some people might not realize it, but you are now a public official. You are an appointed public official, and being a public official, especially in the state of Illinois, comes with regulation. You know, there's been situations, which I'm sure we're all familiar with over the years, where maybe public officials haven't always acted in the best public interest in the state of Illinois. And because of that, there have been increasing regulations to try and make sure that we have appropriate guardrails in place for our public officials. And so that's subject to our elected public officials as well as our appointed public officials. And we want to make sure you're aware of that. The last thing we ever want somebody is to unknowingly violate something that they weren't aware of. Since we want to make sure you're aware of what's out there. There's all kinds of laws, our municipal code, the state code. We have an employee ethics act. All of it is pretty straightforward in the idea that you need to act with fairness, honesty, and integrity. And it's a lot about how you use public resources and how you carry yourself. And so we'll dive in on that a little bit. The kind of standard that we try to summarize this is that you need to use city resources in the most productive and efficient way possible and only for the work of local government. And these rules are not only applicable to our public officials, but they're also applicable to our public employees. We need to be very careful about how we use public resources and make sure that we're doing everything efficiently and productively and not in a way that's abusive. One of the biggest issues that we encounter are conflicts of interest. And so the rules regulating our elected public officials are a little bit stricter than they are for our boards and commissions. But if you do have a conflict of interest, and so that really comes down to whether you or a family member or perhaps your employer have a direct financial interest in something that you are weighing in on that needs to be disclosed. And at times there needs to be a recusal in order to avoid the appearance of impropriety or impropriety in participating on something where you have a direct financial interest. And it happens every so often. At the board and commission level, our code understands that having brought in subject matter experts into particular boards, there's a higher likelihood of you running into a conflict because you're invested in that industry. And so if that ever comes up, I'd invite you to reach out to your staff liaison, and oftentimes they'll refer you over to my office and we'll have a discussion about how to handle it. But at the board and commission level, it's typically handled by a written disclosure, and then a recusal where you would excuse yourself from the discussions or a vote on an issue that you have a direct financial interest in. All right. We talk about ethics. You've taken an oath. There's things in the municipal code. I'll tell you, during my time, 18 years here at the city, we've never had an ethical violation by a board and commission. So I don't want to scare anybody. I want you to be aware that these are out there. But I don't want you to be like, I'm going to make a mistake. That's a really difficult standard. It's not. I think most people would understand it. But it is a crime. It's even more rare for anyone to be charged with that. But I feel an obligation to advise you that there are serious consequences in the statutes for knowingly and willfully violating the standards of conduct and the ethics laws that are out there. One big part is political activities. Doesn't really happen in Naperville, but we see this. If there's an area where ethical rules get bent that I've seen during my time, it's most often in the political activities arena. Because so often, city staff is working with public officials who have one foot in government and one foot in politics. And at times they're all running for election and things of that nature, and the lines have to be pretty clearly drawn there. So the best way to summarize it is if anybody is involved in politics, if you're involved in some type of campaign, you cannot use government property and you cannot use government employees, okay? Councilman Wilson can't come into my office and say, hey, Mike, what are you doing this weekend? Why don't you go knock on some doors for me? As has been the case perhaps in some other governmental units throughout the state of Illinois. Or, hey, here's my campaign flyer. Would you mind making some copies on your copier for that? That's using property, that's using employees, that type of stuff is prohibited. So just be aware of that in case you encounter those issues. Not that Councilman Wilson would ever do that. The only one I see. Gift Ban Act. This is a weird law. This is a tricky area, but we need to talk about it. In Illinois, there is a law that prohibits public officials and public employees from accepting gifts from prohibited sources. So the first idea is, what's a gift? Anything that has a tangible value. That can be cash, that can be food, that could be if I go to Sparrow and they say, hey, let's buy you a cup of coffee. That can be tickets to a concert or an event or a game. Those are all considered gifts. A prohibited source is anyone who does business with the city or who is likely to do business with the city. So if you're in either of those camps, you gotta be real careful if somebody like that offers you a gift, okay? That's all just to kind of keep everything legitimate. Now the state also, and that includes you as public officials now, get ready for this, it also includes your spouses and any member of your family. So you've kind of brought them into this situation as well. And so if you're somebody who's a friend and they give you something, that's different. But if it's being given to somebody through a business relationship or because of your role or to your family because of your role, you become within the boundaries of the Gift Ban Act. Now the state is somewhat understanding about what's reasonable. And so this is going to get real technical, but there is an exception for food and beverages up to $75 per day. And so as a public official or a public employee, you are allowed to accept up to $75 in food and beverages per day from a prohibited source. What this is trying to tackle is the idea that if somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, I'd like to talk to you about something, would you mind having lunch with me? You don't have to sit there and fight over the bill at lunch, okay? They can buy you lunch. That's not going to be a violation of the Gift Ban Act. The state is understanding that. And if that happens, you don't have to document it. You don't have to report it. It's just on your honor, presumed, okay? If it gets above $75, well, then you've exceeded it per day. But for instance, I don't know, I mean, think about all the places that do business. So if I went into Sparrow and they said, hey, Mike, let's buy your coffee today, I could accept that, right? It's more expensive than I like to say, that cup of coffee, but they could give it to me and I could walk out and that there wouldn't be a violation there. They could do that every single day and it wouldn't be a violation. So that's not where we want to be, but that's the idea of the intention behind the Gift Ban Act. In addition to $75 per day, you can accept up to $100 in gift value per year from any single prohibited source, okay? And so most often where I see the Gift Ban Act coming into play are tickets. It used to be like when Ribfest was here, when the Last Fling used to have bigger concerts over on Rotary Hill, it wouldn't be unusual for the JCs or the Exchange Club to send tickets to the council members and say, hey, we really hope you can come to our event. The council would say, hey, am I allowed to accept this under the Gift Ban Act? And so then we would analyze it and we would say, hey, is the value of that ticket below $100? And typically it was. And so I would write a memo saying, hey, you're allowed to accept those tickets. You don't need to do anything about it. It's all contemplated within the exceptions of the Gift Ban Act. Okay. And they could take it from the JCs and go to Ribfest and their spouse or their kids in the house could do it. And that would all be okay. All right. So it's not like it's a super, super strict law. What they're really trying to avoid are, people who are trying to have undue influence on our public officials or public employees. Okay.
$100 per person per year, per family per year, since you bring the family into it.
It's per person per year. So they could give me $100 gift. It also addresses, like, sometimes our employees or our public officials may go to a conference or a seminar and they may have some like swag that they're giving out. They may give you a bag, or they may give you something else. You can accept that. You don't have to worry about it. I have gotten a call from an employee who says, hey, there was like a raffle and I won an iPod. You know, what do I do about this? Well, that's over $100. So then we have to figure out what to do. And there's a couple things you can do. If you're ever given a gift and you realize maybe later that it exceeds the limit, there's two options. One, you give it back. You say, you know what, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this. I've talked to the city attorney. He says it's a violation, so I'm going to give it back. Violation's cured. The other thing you can do is you can make an offsetting charitable donation. And so again, if somebody took an iPad and it was worth $200, but they're only allowed to accept $100, my legal advice would say you can give it back, or you can make a $100 offsetting charitable donation. Now, there's no laws that say about how you have to document that. But in the good government would be to notify potentially the legal department. We'd have a conversation about it. I'd say, hey, send me an email. We'll document it. We'll have it in the records. That way, if anyone ever asks about it, we'd be able to show that you identified this and that you made it right. Okay. So that's the Gift Ban Act. It's kind of a strange law, but it's out there. And at times it's kind of a gotcha law where people might watch you somewhere and see something happen and they try to bring it up. So just be aware that you've been advised about it. Conflict of interest, I talked about it a little bit earlier, really focusing on the fact that you're in a fiduciary position, that you're carrying responsibilities on behalf of the city, and that you can't engage in activities where you have a direct financial interest. You know, Councilman Wilson votes on the electricity rates and he's an electricity customer, right? So there's understanding about things along that line. And what we're really talking about are kind of unusual contracts that you may have a business that's engaging in with the city. That would be something that we'd run into. We had a council member for a while who was a professor at North Central College. The mayor works for the Naperville Park District as a part-time police officer. I don't know if everybody knows that. And at times we contract with the Park District. And so we have to make sure that we are managing those interests appropriately. In addition to kind of mandatory disclosures and mandatory recusals for conflicts, at times people just recuse, not because there's a direct financial interest, but to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And I try to steer people away from that. That can be abused at times. But if you have such an interest in something that you feel that by participating in the deliberations or the vote, it could tarnish the brand of the board or commission or of the city, it's appropriate to say, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out, because even though I don't have a direct conflict, people may misperceive my relationship based on this issue. And if that ever comes up, call our office and we can talk about it. That's why you have my card.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So investment portfolios.
Yep.
All right. So I have an ETF. That
Yep.
Is energy, a couple of them that are energy related.
Great question. There are specific thresholds in the code and in the state code regarding investment portfolios. And that typically is a threshold of about 5%. As long as you don't owe 5% of a publicly traded company, then that's understood to be okay. And I rarely encounter anybody who has, 5% of Apple or anything like that. So, but, I know there's a lot of different opportunities out there. If you ever have a question about it, we can talk about it. There's also, so that's a great question. I want to talk a little bit about conduct of members. We do have codified rules about our members' conduct. This is from the Naperville Municipal Code. So these are our local rules. I'll try to read through a couple of them. No board or commission member shall use his or her office or any city employee to promote his or her private enterprises, whether or not compensation is received. We've talked about that a little bit. You're subject to the ethical requirements. At all times during the performance of your official duties, you shall comply with the city's workplace safety, harassment prevention, and respectful workplace policies. I imagine all of you have had private employment at some point and have had harassment type policies and training. Those things apply to the city as well, and we expect our board and commission members to follow those. Always demonstrate respect for the opinions of each other, members and staff, and members of the audience. That's probably one that I maybe get the most emails on, You know, sometimes when people disagree, they start to say, have I been disrespected? And oftentimes we have to say, hey, people are able to disagree. These are contentious issues at times. That doesn't mean it's a violation of this. You were heard, you were given the opportunity. And so it's a bit subjective, but just be aware that that's out there. We really want to show professionalism and respect for the opinions of everyone who comes before the public body. You should perform the duties to the benefit of citizens with integrity, impartiality, without allowing prejudice, favoritism, or the opportunity for personal gain to influence decisions or to interfere with public interest or interfere with the professional operations of the city. Board and commission members shall conduct themselves in a manner that will preserve public confidence in and respect for the government they represent, and refrain from the actions or words that compromise the integrity and reputation of the city. You're all residents, and I think you understand Naperville has a very, very good reputation, right? I always say we love our lists. We're always at the top of these lists, and we send out the press releases on them. Well, we're here to carry that baton, right? We don't want to be, any of us as employees or as the officials, be the ones who saw the Naperville get tarnished in that way. So just really please be aware of the public confidence and the respect that we have, and do your best to maintain that. 7 is probably the second most emails that I get. And that's board or commission members may choose to post or comment on various social media sites using their personal accounts. In these instances, it is recommended the content and tenor of the comments and posts model the same decorum used in board and commission meetings. It's just the reality these days. The modern town hall is not out at the Smart Park here, it's on social media. And we've all seen it. It can really devolve quickly into all kinds of, inappropriate or undesirable type of comments. And so we have this in here to try and guard against that. It's just really remembering that, hey, you're always a representative of the city. People are watching you. At the same time, recognizing that as a public official or as a public employee, you don't give up your First Amendment rights. You still get to speak freely as an individual about whatever you want and however you want. But we're trying to make sure that people are trying, especially when you're talking about topics that are relevant to your appointment, to try and use decorum and keep that respectful attitude out there. If you ever have any questions about it, we can talk about it. But I'll tell you, people love to send me screenshots of comments that are made out there and say, "What do you think about this? How can they say that?" It's difficult at times. Social media is hard to manage. And man, I'll talk more about this later, but so much of these codes were written before, especially when we get into the state codes, before the advent of social media. So we're trying to apply an antiquated law to a modern world, and at times it's challenging. Talk about just maintaining confidentiality of privileged information. At times you may become privileged to have privileged information. We try to maintain that confidential status. And number 9, I would say, is the third most important one that I get calls about. Board and commission members making statements about city business should clarify that they are speaking for themselves and not on behalf of the board or commission. Board and commission members should also make this clarification while speaking on non-city business and using their board and commission titles. I call this the Tim Messer rule. If you ever watch council, Tim Messer is a guy who's been on some board and commissions. He often speaks to the council. Every time he speaks, even though I don't think he's currently on a board or commission, he says, "My name's Tim Messer. I'm speaking on my own behalf and not on behalf of any organization that may be a part of." And that's a great disclaimer right off the bat. He just always says that. And so we don't have too many issues with this, but at times I'll advise board and commission members to say, hey, it's important. They'll say, hey, I'm planning on saying this. I'm planning on sharing this. Just want to make sure it's okay. And I'd say, hey, you get the right to share whatever you want. It'd be really helpful if up front you just said, hey, I'm speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of any board and commission that I'm on. Because really, a board and commission only speaks through a majority vote at this meeting. That's how board and commissions speak. They speak by the voting actions that they take at their board and commission. Anything outside of that, you could say, I know how most of them feel. I know how this is there. You got to be really careful about that. So the more cognizant and attentive you are to that rule, the less criticism they encounter in the public. Transparency. Some of you may have been involved in boards, your HOA or, a school board or some nonprofit or whatever else, private business. Working for the public is completely different in that we have sunshine laws and that all of our activity has to be transparent. We're doing the people's work and the people have a right to see it and know about it. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of those regulations. One thing that we've been trying to do to increase transparency is have consistent meeting spaces, like how the boards and commissions all meet here. It used to be that they all met differently and people might not be able to find them. Just the standardization of our processes, allowing written comments is the newest addition, that people can submit written comments, making sure everybody is enforcing public forum rules. We're working on getting the audio to be shared publicly. We're working on getting video to be shared publicly, just all in an effort to increase transparency. The agendas are out in advance. We have clear rules. And so that's all stuff that's out there to gain transparency and engagement. The Freedom of Information Act. This is something that's a little tricky too. The public has a right to see all of our documents. And so we deal with thousands of Freedom of Information Act requests every year. And it's actually a significant portion of what we do in the legal department, what the community services department deals with, and what the police department deals with. I would say half are for police records. Hey, I had an accident. I want my accident report, you know, and we send that over to them. Hey, I know somebody who got arrested. I want to see their mugshot. We get that sometimes. And then there's a whole variety of, hey, I want to see, you know, all kinds of detailed records that the city may have in its possession. And we have to turn those over. And it's really highly regulated and really tight timeframes in order to do that. The one that's probably most sensitive are people's emails and their text messages. And so it's not unusual to say, I want to see the mayor's emails to this person during this time frame. And then we have to turn those over. And so we go and we search the mayor's email. He's got a public email address and we turn those over. That's something that happens at times. But you need to be aware that people could ask for that from you. And that's something that's an exposure out there that people need to be made aware of. And there's not an exception just because you're using a personal device versus a private device. There's some differences in law that we could talk about for times, but if you are engaging, the most sensitive time is if you are receiving or sending text messages or receiving or sending emails about public business while in an open meeting. The courts have said that that's clearly subject to FOIA. The people have a right to know what you're talking about during a public meeting. If you're on your own, there's a little bit more question. If we ever get a FOIA for any of that, we will share that with you. We will talk with you about it. We don't just go and grab anything or send anything without talking to you first. But be aware, you know, a lot of law on this comes from people trying to navigate around it. There was a public university where somebody had sent a FOIA for some records from the public university, and they said, no records responsive. Then they FOIA'd another entity, and they turned over records when they received an email from somebody at that person that said, hey, I'm using my Gmail account to avoid FOIA. And then the court said, no, we can't allow this. We can't allow people to be using proxies to avoid the transparency laws. And so now it's become a little bit more difficult, a little bit more attentive to the responses there. But mostly it's about documents. So the agendas. So this material that's in front of you here, if somebody were to ask for this, we would turn it over. Okay, so anything that we possess, anything that the city possesses, we have Personnel Records Retention Act, which says how long we have to keep it, and then how we have to turn it over when it's requested. There are exceptions for certain attorney-client privilege materials, for proprietary information. So if we're dealing with a potential vendor and they say, hey, we want to share this with you, but this is proprietary, confidential, business related, we say, well, mark it that way, and we won't have to turn that over if there is a FOIA for it. And so that's about FOIA. And so just be aware that that's out there. Let's talk a little bit about meetings. Open Meetings Act is a really big deal, and it's at times a little bit counterintuitive. The Open Meetings Act is what ensures that all of our public meetings are done publicly and in the sunshine and transparently. And so any gathering of a majority of a quorum discussing public business, so anytime you're talking about something that's within the scope of this board and commission, you have to do it in a public meeting if you're meeting with a majority of a quorum. So PUAB is 7 members. So a majority is 4. And so a majority of a quorum is 3. Okay, that's the key number. That's how the math works. You cannot gather in groups of 3 to discuss PUAB business outside of an open meeting. And what's an open meeting? Well, it has to be 48 hours notice. It has to be available to the public. There has to be public forum. We have to take minutes. It has to be recorded. It has to be published. All these aspects of the Open Meetings Act is what it takes. And so what gives me the most heartburn is when I have, public officials or going to, oh, this is not an open meeting. It's a private meeting, but we're going to go with a majority of a quorum, but nobody's going to say anything. We're just going to listen. Just going to listen. I say, that's a big risk, because if anybody says anything about it, you can't unring that bell. As soon as somebody engages or has a discussion, now all of a sudden we've had the gathering of a majority of a quorum discussing public business, and there hasn't been notice, and it isn't in an open meeting, and all these technical requirements aren't there, so we get stuck in a potential Open Meeting Act violation. So as much as we can, in an abundance of caution, we really caution people from not gathering in a majority of a quorum outside of a public meeting. What you are able to do is talk one-on-one. You can talk one-on-one all day. Lou can reach out to Jim. Lou can reach out to Rupa. They can have those conversations and call them on the phone or meet in person, have that discussion, turn around and talk to somebody else. But as weird as it sounds, the 3 of you can't get together, okay? Because that constitutes an open meeting. Yes, sir.
So like a city council meeting,
Yes.
is that considered an open meeting that we could all attend, for example?
It is. It's a little bit unusual with the board inside the board, but it is an open meeting. So when you speak publicly at that open meeting, it's all within the confines. It's on the agenda. It's all within the confines of the Open Meetings Act. You can't, 3 of you can't go walk up and sit in the corner of a city council meeting and huddle up and have a private conversation about PUAB business. That wouldn't be there because there's no transparency, but you could do it public. And so that's part of it.
Well, and that begs the thing, I've been to a number of city council meetings, and you'll see 2 council people talking to each other,
Yes.
that no one else hears that conversation.
Correct. That's the key. If the 2 of them are talking, it's not Open Meeting Act violations. It's just one-on-one. If a third person goes over, then we have an issue. Now, this is important too. You can talk about social things. You can say, hey, how the Cubs doing? And they can get together and have those conversations. They could even say, hey, we're going to go out for a drink after the council meeting. And as long as they're not talking about business, that's not an Open Meeting Act violation. They can go to a political event, and that's not an Open Meeting Act violation, even if there's 3 council members or 3 PUAB members together, as long as they're not talking about city business, okay? But I always advise people, like, how would somebody from the public know, right? We worry about optics, and optics are often important in the public sector. And so when you see 3 council members talking, you say, hey, they're talking about something about business, and that's a violation. That's what we get. I get emails. So be careful about optics, be aware of that, but also know that if it's a purely social gathering and it doesn't have anything to do with city business, it's not subject to an Open Meeting Act. Same thing with like my emails. If my wife emails me and says, hey, let's go get lunch later, and then someone sends a FOIA for my emails, I don't have to turn over the email from my wife because that wasn't about city business. That was about personal business. So there's exceptions there too. The most important thing about the Open Meeting Act, and one of the trickier things when I talked about how we're applying laws to modern standards, is that it doesn't just apply to verbal conversations, but it can also apply to electronic communication. And so you can't engage in text messages with more than 1 person about public business, because that's considered, if there's a back and forth, that's considered contemporaneous communication. And so it seems strange, and it's certainly foreign if you're used to working in the private sector, but 3 of you can't be on a text string. All of you can't be on a text string talking about PUAB business. That would be an Open Meeting Act violation. You could text 1 person, but you can't text more than 1. That applies to email as well. So you'll often see when you get emails from staff, we'll blind copy the public officials so that they can't reply to all and disseminate their communication amongst a bunch of people. So usually we blind copy them, so there's no chance of that. And the trickiest part of all, which we've encountered more often than not these days, is on social media. And that you can't engage in a contemporaneous discussion of public business on social media. And so there may be, I'll use former mayor, Cherico. He had a large social media following and he loved to engage on social media. And at times he'd put a post up there and the post would get a lot of responses. And there was council members who were really interested in the discussion and the people who are paying attention, and they'd say, I want to respond to that post as well. And I'd have to advise them, you can't. I understand the temptation. I understand why you'd want to, but if you get in there and start engaging and then somebody else does, then we have three people having a contemporaneous conversation online of city business, which is an open meeting act violation. And so that's important to know. It also at times can explain why somebody might not be able to talk to you or engage with you in a certain way because they're very protective about that. Talking about that majority of a quorum, one more piece I want to hit on is that you can't meet in three or more, but you could meet with Councilman Wilson, because Councilman Wilson is not a member of the PUAB, and so he has a vote. He is a ex officio liaison of the city council. So two of you could meet with the council liaison, but three of you couldn't. Same with former members of the PUAB. You could meet with them. They're no longer under the vise of the Open Meetings Act, so you could meet with them if necessary. That would not be a violation. Just those are some of the questions that I get sometimes, so be aware of that. There are criminal consequences. I'll tell you, I've rarely, if ever, seen that. Again, it had to be willful and intentional, like when somebody is intentionally trying to avoid some of the regulations. I would also say the student representatives aren't part of it. They're not official members of the board and commission. They're invited a student representative, so they can also join into some of your meetings if that were appropriate. So that's about it for the Open Meeting Act, unless there's any questions. We talked about a quorum, what a quorum meets. So unless you don't have any, as long as you don't have any questions about that, let's just keep going. Now here's your chart of what the quorum looks like. You're on the 7 column there. Glad we got our math right. Remote participation. This is something that's really come up a lot since the pandemic. Whether we're able to conduct so many private entities and other boards, and they've really benefited from being able to have Zoom or Teams and participate remotely. People tend to like that in certain circumstances. Government is still pretty unfriendly to that type of meeting. They very much prefer in-person meetings, partly so that the public has access and that people can show up and engage. Remote participation from public officials under the law are only allowed in very specific circumstances. Personal illness or disability, if you're away for work or other public business, if it's a family emergency or an unexpected childcare obligation. This one was just added last year. And so if any of those are the reasons that you can't be at a in-person meeting, you can reach out to the staff liaison in advance and you could call into the meeting and participate. It requires a vote from the quorum. A quorum has to be present in order to hold the meeting. And then there has to be a vote to allow the person who is absent for one of those meetings to participate remotely. We do this at council sometimes. Council members, they have full-time jobs. Being a council member is not a full-time job. And so a lot of times they may be traveling for business and they say, hey, this is really important. I want to make sure I can get involved. And if they're traveling for work or something else, they can call in over the phone. We put them through the speakers in the chambers and they participate in the meeting. But just be aware that those are the only reasons. The most common one that I get questions about, somebody's on vacation. Hey, I'm on vacation, it's spring break and there happens to be a council meeting or happens to be a board or commission meeting. Can I call in? You can't, because that's not one of the delineated exceptions. I think that's it. We're really big on public participation. We have a really engaged community. They show up at our meetings. They love sending in written comments, and there's a lot of attention. And so just be aware that that is something that's encouraged, and we provide lots of opportunities, and we try to be as transparent and as accessible as we can to the public so that they can participate. We allow now written comments for all our boards and commissions to be submitted in advance of the meeting. We have sign-up sheets. There's a difference. Sometimes this is a little bit confusing. There's a difference between public forum and people who speak on specific agenda items. Generally, public forum is reserved for people who want to speak about something that's not on the agenda. And then at times people will sign up to speak on a specific agenda item. Typically, the city allows for that, and the city council does in both circumstances. Times are limited. It is fair to have courts say reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on public participation. And so it's limited to 3 minutes unless it's granted additional time by the chair. At times, there's some questions or some information that needs to be gained, and that can be granted when appropriate. But good practice is to treat everyone the same, to enforce your rules consistently. It gets really tricky if you start letting some people slide on it, and then you try to enforce it. That stuff at times for other boards and commissions and at the city council can become controversial. So I would encourage you to make sure that you're trying to do your best to enforce everything equally without respect to viewpoint or the person who's speaking, but just have the rules be the rules and enforce them. One thing is, you're not under an obligation. I appreciate the back and forth with Mr. Bully today, but there's no obligation to engage with public forum speakers. I watch the school board meetings sometimes. I don't know if you ever hear them. They don't engage at all. They have a disclaimer before every school board meeting where they say, we'll listen to your comments, we'll take them under advisement, and staff will respond offline if appropriate. And that's it. And there's no back and forth at the school board meetings. Our council has always, been more accountable. I don't know how to use the right word for that. They've been more engaging with the public who show up, but it's not necessary. So don't ever feel like you're under an obligation to answer a question. You don't have to provide information. You don't have to have all the right answers, and neither does staff. So much we know it's challenging when someone shows up and you don't know what they're going to talk about to be able to respond in the moment. And it's perfectly appropriate to say, thank you for your comments. We'll take those under advisement and we'll respond as appropriate offline. Most importantly is that both speakers, where they need to refrain from harassing comments and maintain decorum. And, Naperville does a really good job. If you watch any other communities, at times other communities have, things that kind of get out of hand on really, really intense issues. Naperville's been pretty good about that. Where we most often see the enforcement of decorum rules is about applauding or booing or jeering. The mayors have always been really against that. We don't want anybody to feel intimidated. We don't want anyone to feel like they aren't able to share what they want because the crowd's against them. We try to respect all opinions and make sure everybody has equal access to that. And so you want to be really careful about enforcing that. If you feel like people are starting to cheer or boo or do anything to interfere with the speaker, the encouragement is to ask them to stop. And if they don't stop, take a recess and then come back and continue with it. There's a little bit of a conflict between what we can do and what we should do. The people do have First Amendment rights. And so at times I've heard boards say, hey, I don't want that person to curse. First Amendment protects cursing, and so you can ask them to stop. You can ask them to be within guidelines. But just because somebody's saying something that we don't like doesn't give us the right to stop them speaking. And so that's really important with how we enforce our public participation rules.
Unless they curse at someone.
Yeah, well, that's true. There's a Supreme Court case. They said one man's prose is another man's profanity, or something along those lines. And so let's talk a little bit about the procedures. I think Chairperson Helkias knows this well. You guys run a good board here, but the chairperson is supposed to recognize everyone before they speak, just to maintain some structure. People shouldn't just be speaking out of turn. You always look to the chair to get permission to speak before you speak. That's a good rule. You can always refer things to staff if you're not sure about an answer and rely on their expertise. You're not expected to know everything about the operations of the city. Actions are taken by motion, which are then seconded, and there's often deliberation before there is a vote. And so that's important. The city allows for debate before and after motions at times. A strict Robert's rules would typically require a motion in a second and then deliberation. That's kind of the best practice. But at times it's the council needs, or the board or commission needs input in order to make a motion. So they'll engage in some deliberation at times before making a motion. That's all part of it. But if you ever need help with that, staff understands how to handle it. Just talking about the chairperson's role. What's the chairperson do? It's a one-year term. It's decided year by year. It leads and manages the meeting, sets the tone, make sure that procedures being followed. Is a great contact for staff. Oftentimes the staff liaison will correspond with the chair about the agenda, about any issues that are coming up, how we're going to structure things. welcomes the group as chairperson did a great job with today. And then it's just watching out for these compliance issues. That the chairperson sits as the parliamentarian of the public meeting, making type of procedural calls. And so that's important. Yeah, and so these are the governing rules. We first look to our city code and state law, Robert's Rules of Orders, kind of a backstop for anything that's not covered in there. At times there's special rules and procedures by individual boards. And then at times the council can give direct, guidance for boards and commissions. Yeah, so I'm sorry, that was a lot. I appreciate your patience. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. We don't generally have to take questions from the audience unless the chairperson recognizes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
You mentioned conflict of interest. Do you examine which organizations the board members may be affiliated with and whether they may influence their decision-making?
Do I? No. Does the council? That's part of the resume and that's part of the application process. For board and commission members to be put on boards, they submit an application which has questions that have been formulated in order to kind of vet the candidate. Typically, there's an interview with the mayor where the mayor has the opportunity to ask those questions. And then it's submitted to the council in advance of a meeting so that they can ask those questions and then they're ultimately approved by the city council.
What if an outside organization influences that person to a degree that they already have their mind made
Well, I mean,
on a given subject?
everybody comes in with their own points of view. Whether you're a part of an organization or affiliated with an organization or you're completely independent, you have your own life experiences and worldview that impact the thoughts and opinions that you have as you sit on a board. I don't think that we can say just because somebody is part of a board or of some organization that they ascribe to all the same positions of that board, that they can't be an independent thinker and vice versa. And so those are things that have to be weighed as to the credibility when anybody hears what somebody has to say.
Any other further questions from the board?
Just
Yes,
question,
go ahead.
in the beginning, you said about the 2 full terms. If you fill an unexpired term, that's not a full term.
Correct. Correct. That's exactly right. So we allow appointments of vacancies not to count against the appointed full terms.
I only brought that up because that's what I did, and I always got nervous when I said, well, I served 8 years, and like, well, how did you do that?
Yep.
So,
That's allowed. Well, I thank you for your attention, and Nicor, again, thanks for letting me go. I really
Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much.
time. My pleasure. You have my cards. If there's anything you want to reach out and talk about outside of the meeting, please call me anytime.
Thank you.
My
Great
pleasure.
job.
My pleasure.
Okay, now we will have our presentation by NICAR.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. I very much appreciate the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you all today. My name is Jim Herman, and I'm Vice President of Gas Operations for NICOR Gas, and along with our 3 sister utilities in Georgia, Virginia, and Tennessee. I've been in the energy industry for about 42 years. Initially with the interstate pipeline side of things, then power generation development, wholesale marketing and trading, and then utility operations, commercial activities, etc. I'm also a 40-year resident in here, 1985, and never thought I would live this far out. I was born in Chicago, but you come out here, you put roots down. That was back when it was cheap, right? So you put roots down and you never leave. So in that amount of time, I've watched the Naperville electric utilities really become an extremely reliable provider of power, which I very much enjoy. So I appreciate all the services provided by the city. You don't mind going to the next slide?
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk about today was really it's so uncommon for people to lose their gas service that a lot of people don't realize just how much energy we're delivering here in Northern Illinois. So that's what I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we fit into a decarbonized future. Particularly important to me, I had a grandson born this morning, so I think about that just like everybody else, even though I'm part of a company that delivers fossil fuels. I do think about things like climate change. And I'm very certain about NICOR's role in that in the future. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. I did want to also mention, NICOR is owned by a company called Southern Company. They're a large energy provider in the Southeast, including building and commissioning the first two nuclear power plants to come online built from scratch since Braidwood here in Illinois. So that's how long it's been since. So those will be delivering about 2,000 megawatts of carbon-free energy for the next 60 to 80 years. So that's our company in a nutshell. So as I said, really happy to be here tonight. Not only have I lived in this community for 40 years, but NICOR itself has been headquartered here for a long time. We're headquartered here today. Our headquarters is at Route 59 and 88. We've been headquartered here for at least 60 years and been a part of this community and watched it grow as well. On the screen, you see some of our customers, but NICOR is actually amongst the utilities, gas and electric. We are the largest deliverer of energy in Illinois, and we're one of the largest gas utilities here as well. So we really do play a profound impact in the energy grid here in Northern Illinois. You see a number of our great Naperville customers. Naperville, between the residential, commercial, industrial clients, make up about 2%, 2 to 2.5% of our deliveries here and our number of customers. And I'll go into some more stats later on. But it's about 55 million therms consumed here in the residential sector. To put it in electric terms, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but if you were to take our deliveries over the course of a year, it equates to about 140 terawatts of energy delivered. That's the amount of energy that we're delivering here today. I think I understand City of Naperville's electric is 1.2. ComEd's is in the 80s, about 85 to 88. So just to give you an idea of amount of energy, there you go. So I put up on the screen our service territory. You see we have most of Northern Illinois. It generally overlaps with Commonwealth Edison's service territory. You go back to the 60s and we're the same company before we separated. We do not serve the city of Chicago, and we don't serve the eastern half of Lake County, right by the lake. That's served by our colleagues, Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas. We serve 2.1 million residential customers, 180,000 commercial, and about 11,000 industrials. In terms of our deliveries, annually, I mentioned earlier, about 140 million megawatt hours or 140 terawatts delivered annually. Our record peak hour, which happened in 2019, January 2019, was about 63,000 megawatts. So just to put that on a scale, I think my understanding is Naperville's here is about 320 is the peak. That's a summertime peak, I imagine, right? Our peak occurs, in the wintertime, when it's minus 25 degrees, dark, maybe the wind's blowing, maybe it's not. That's when our peaks happen in the wintertime. When you look at our average winter hours, this is just a very typical hour in the heart of the winter, December through February. We're delivering about 30,000 megawatts. And I'll put that in a perspective with the electric grid here in a little bit, but that's just a very mundane, typical winter hour for us here at NICOR Gas. And remember that includes the city of Chicago. That's just NICOR. We have on-system storage here located right here in Illinois. And on a design peak, that storage alone can provide about half of our winter peak hour. Typically, it's more like a third that actually occurs. And the reason is on the gas side, when you see those peak hours come, you typically pack up the system a couple hours in advance. And we'll see our storage peaks a couple hours before the actual load peaks. So they don't always sync up. But to give you an idea, our storage under a design situation could put out over 31,000 megawatts just on its own. Next slide, please. A little bit about the background of our system. I talked about our storage here in Illinois, but what we have underground here supporting our system, it's 135 billion cubic feet of gas. And to put that in electric terms, that equates to over 39 terawatt hours of energy, 39 million megawatts. That's how much energy we have sitting here in the ground. As we go into the winter, we make sure it's full. It's like a giant battery full of that energy. And we fill that every year. We buy it when demand is down and prices are usually lower. It sits there in storage, and then it comes out when demand is generally higher in the wintertime. We can move it up and down to follow load. We could use it to store gas when there's too much, we can ramp up injection. So that's what we're doing with our own on-system storage right here in Illinois. That provides, some price arbitrage value for our customers because again, they can buy gas in those summer months, take it on winter. It provides a lot of resilience because it's backing up a lot of the other supplies that are flowing to our system. So it's a very valuable part of our system. Another characteristic that we have here that brings value to all of our customers is where we're located relative to the interstate grid. The Chicago hub, which is actually in the Joliet area, got the second greatest liquidity of any of the gas hubs in the United States, second only to the Henry hub down in Louisiana. There's 11 interstate pipelines that run through northern Illinois. We're connected to 8. And so that means that where we buy our gas from, and by the way, we don't produce any gas. We have to purchase all of our gas from upstream suppliers. But because of our pipeline connections, we can actually buy that gas on several different providers at production basins all over the country. So those basins are in Appalachia, South Texas, offshore Louisiana, Western Canada, the mid-continent down to Oklahoma. That brings a diversity of supply. It brings value and competition into the market here. It's great for us, but it's even better for our customers because our large customers who are buying their own gas, that's how they stay competitive. That's what brings business to Illinois. And by having that kind of liquidity up here in the market, they can hedge their production, they can hedge the prices and really manage their own costs. So that's a big part of the system. What we've done to bring that to bear with our customers is we've got almost 100 different connections with those pipelines. That way our customers don't have to worry about where are they on our system and does that tie their hands with who they can buy gas from. It's a very fungible product here. So that. And then the third item to talk about is our transmission system. We've got a series of higher pressure lines. They're shown in the map in red. What they really do is they connect that storage and those suppliers to our different distribution systems. So we have very few single feeds, a lot of redundancy of supply that brings pressure closer, into the markets. And, that pressure really provides, we call it line pack, but it provides a buffer. So a lot of times on the power side, you get some voltage imbalances, you lose those loads. That gives us pressure swings. So when we see problems, it gives us time to go out and deal with those problems before they turn into outages. And then all this infrastructure is also buried. And I know Naperville is very familiar with the benefits of buried infrastructure, what that means for resiliency and reliability. So those are just a few items I want to talk about our system that really brings value to our customers here. The next slide really puts into perspective the amount of energy that we're delivering. So what you have here in red, that's the ComEd areas load. So this is really PJM West, or the ComEd area of PJM West. So this includes Naperville's deliveries, for instance. So Commonwealth Edison territories all-time peak occurred back in 2011. It was a summertime peak, and it was just under 24,000 megawatts or 24 gigs. I think the plan right now is less. I think their design peak is down closer to 21 these days, but that's the all-time that they ever delivered. NICOR's record actually occurred about 5 years ago, 2019, 6 years ago. That was a bitter January day. We had minus 25 in Romeoville and Naperville. We had minus 31 in Rockford. These are temperatures, not wind chills. And on that day, we had our peak of 63,000 megawatts. That's our peak hour. And the reason I like to talk about that is what really matters in the grid. And those of you that are familiar with grid reliability, you can't look at annual numbers. You can't look at even seasons. You've got to look at the peaks. You've got to understand how equipment is working in those peaks. How end-use devices like heat pumps work in those peaks. How different supply points like wind and solar and other equipment performs in those peaks. Again, it's happening in the wintertime when it's very, very cold, it's dark. It's probably not blowing. These peaks can last 2 to 3 days. A lot of the batteries, in fact, all the batteries in the queue on the grid right now are 2 to 4 hours duration. Our peaks are 2 to 3 days. So these are the things you've got to look at, in terms of the peak design when you're looking at a grid. And again, I think that 320, that is a subset of ComEd. So one of the questions we could ask is, well, what would it look like if all of the heating load with natural gas was electrified? And when we look at that, the first thing we do is we look at the peak winter time ComEd area peak, and that was about 16,000 megawatts back in 2016. 16,000. So if you added that 16 onto our 63, you get about 80,000 megawatts. That's what the grid would have to be able to handle in the winter time. And remember, we don't serve the city of Chicago. ComEd's numbers include load in the city and the North Shore. Our colleagues at Peoples and North Shore, that's another 30,000. So if you electrify it all, then you'd have to be handling 110,000 versus an all-time max of 24. So just try to put in perspective the amount of energy pulling on our system. And if you think about it, the rationale is there on the power side here. I'm sure you plan around cooling degree days a lot. That's tried and true. The difference between your mean temperature at 65, you do that at gas side too. So if you think about a really hot day that might average 95 here or 30 cooling degree days, whereas we tend to look at 85 degree days on the heating side. So that gives you an idea why there's so much more heating demand, than there is cooling demand power. So just putting that in perspective. The next slide is kind of talking about value. Typically when we do this, we're comparing ourselves against the Northern Illinois grid in general. The numbers I've got on a slide here really compare back to ComEd. And we look at that two ways. Just like we buy all of our gas, we don't produce all the molecules, we have to buy from someone else. ComEd does the same thing. They don't own any generation. They sold off, they too had to procure. So we look at value and cost of service in two buckets. One is the value and cost for the delivery side. And the other is for the cost of the energy that you're putting into the pipes and wires. So when we compare that on a delivery side, our unit costs at NICOR, and this is excluding taxes, are about 1/4 the cost to deliver electricity on the ComEd system. Now, when you look at the supply, what about the energy going into those pipes? We go back and we look at ComEd's energy supply charge going back to 2018 and compared to our gas supply charge going back in that same period. And it averages over 4 times higher. In other words, electricity for the supply is 4 times higher per unit than it is gas. It's actually higher right now. Most of you are aware that power prices have gone up quite a bit here recently, primarily because of the capacity situation being a little bit short here and concerns. And so the relationship right now is about 5 times. Throw a couple numbers at it. Residential bill typical here in Naperville, all in for the past year, delivery as well as supply excluding taxes would be just under 3 cents a kilowatt, all in about 2.8 cents, all in for the past year. I think on the power side, probably, I think average here, probably 14, 15 cents. And this includes monetizing the fixed monthly charge into kind of unitized value. So again, it's about, 1/4, 1/5 the cost. So that's the value that we're bringing to our customers. And when business looks to site here, one of the things they are looking at are energy costs. So, we want to make sure we're here for the customers, giving them a low cost option for energy coming in. And we feel that we're very much a part of the energy mix here. We can't displace the power load here. You're not going to use gas to power your devices. You're not going to use gas to run a lot of your important electric loads there. But gas is a great source for heating and other things in the home. So that's the way we view our role here. Next one is reliability. Give me the hook if I'm getting low on time. I want to talk a little bit about reliability. I talked about some of our last 3 peak events. That first one that I talked about back in January was really cold. In that event, we did that without a single customer losing access to their gas service. In that event, there were about 50,000 power outages reported in that area. Again, that's all across all of Northern Illinois, primarily Commonwealth Edison. Winter Storm Elliott, that was the one that hit during the holiday period back in December. That was one where over a 3-day period, we had a very high deliveries. Again, not a single customer lost access to the gas service. And then more recently, over the Martin Luther King holiday in 2024, that particular peak, that was where we actually achieved our largest 3-day peak. And in that period, again, none of our customers lost access to their gas service. There were 153,000 power outages reported during that event. So just talking a little bit about the reliability, we've got to be that reliable under these cold temperatures. People have to have their gas service. It's not that we don't have problems. We are typically fighting a lot of issues out there where we see things that are happening. It's just that the nature of gas in the pipes and line back, we have time to go out and kind of address it before it turns into an outage. So it's not that we don't have issues, it's that we've got a little bit of time to find them. So that's reliability. But demand is still growing on our system. Each year, we're hooking up about 11,000, or in the past year, about 11,000 new customers each year. We do look at how many customers are actually asking for their gas service to be removed. Typically, that would be someone going into full electrification. And I think in the last year, that was about 17. So it's we see a very, very low number. The vast majority of people that are putting in different heating technologies are maintaining their gas for the peak periods and going with heat pumps that then switch over for the kind of supplemental heating. So we still see growth. The tables there kind of give an idea of the growth that we're seeing. Looking ahead, we're seeing a lot of new growth on top of growth we've seen. We haven't seen the pipeline of growth that we see right now in a long, long time. This is primarily due to things you've all read about, seeing data centers and the like. We're only seeing a fraction of the growth that ComEd is seeing. And probably what Naperville is seeing as you look at different businesses on your site here, but it's quite a bit. It equates to about 1.4 gigawatts, is the kind of growth that we see in a lot of these opportunities coming at us. So again, if you think about the electrification front, we talked about, how much the load is that we're serving at those peak hours when it really matters versus electric. Thing you do have to recall is that ComEd has seen a lot of growth already before they even think about electrifying gas load. They're already wrestling with a lot of new growth that they're going to see anyway. So that's the energy picture here in Illinois. It should be great for the economy. We want to work very much together with our electric colleagues we want them all. We want them all. If we want to be part of that story, it's good for the Illinois economy. We want to work together to get it. I talked a little bit about sustainability here. We do a lot with energy efficiency. We have for many, many years. We've got an industry-leading energy efficiency plan. Everybody wins when you reduce energy consumption outright. I've got some statistics up here that apply just to the city of Naperville. About 38,000 participants in our program over the years. 3.73 million therms have been avoided through weatherization and some of the efficiency approaches that we've been able to work with our customers on. $4.7 billion of incentives provided to customers, and just under 20,000 metric tons of CO2 avoided. So great efficiency plan. We're looking to expand it, work with the ICC. Hopefully we can expand that program. We'll see how that goes. What I wanted to close with a little bit, a couple of you mentioned future gas in Illinois. And I also told you I would talk a little bit about how I reconcile, concerns about climate change, with operating a system, that is moving fundamentally a fossil fuel. And the first thing I'll really start with is, as Americans, as Illinoisans, as Napervillians, we expect reliable energy. And I think we have to accept the reality that we have to have reliable energy here. And you look at that on those peak winter hours, and you look at what has to happen. Let's just look at the scenarios here. I'm going to take that full electrification example. Heat pumps are great, and NICOR is a big believer in hybrid technology. We think that's great. We want to support a hybrid approach to heat as much as possible. More electric load under those conditions where it's cold but not bitter cold. That's good for everybody. That's decarbonization while falling back on the NICOR system on those peaks. I want to talk about the peaks a little bit. Even the cold climate heat pumps, you have to look at how much juice those things are demanding when it gets really, really cold. As it gets colder, they need more power to put out the same amount of heat. And even the cold climate heat pumps, they get to a point where in our climate, they need supplemental heating of some kind. That could be a gas fired, that could be a gas furnace. That could be traditional electric resistance heating, but something is going to fall back there. And when you look at the efficiency of traditional electric resistance heating, it's about 100%. Typical gas furnaces, now people put in 95%, 96%. So yes, that is 5% more efficient, but you lose that in the line losses. Line losses on our system are less than 1%. Line losses in the power grid, about 5.5%. That's a ComEd number, not yours. I don't know what Naperville's are. So when you look at that, if you do this, you are simply sending that demand right back to a generation source. What is that generation source going to be in the wintertime? Dispatchable, right? It's not going to be solar unless you put in a ton of batteries. Batteries are 2 to 4 hours, and the duration, we believe it's good. You're gonna fall back on gas-fired power generation. A lot more of it. Despite what CJ says, we think that will drive more gas-fired power generation going in. And here's the thing, the efficiency of gas-fired power generation, even the best, at best is 60%, low 60s. Most power generation for peaking is more like 35 to 40%. So imagine taking out 95% furnaces to send it back to a 35 to 60% generation. So when I look at the realities of our role in this, I look at it as NICOR really is a tried and true low-cost source of energy for those peak conditions. And I think we fully embrace, decarbonized technologies that really work in the rest of the year. So that's kind of my plug, for the hybrid approach. Thanks for your time today. I hope I didn't run over too much. Love to take any questions that y'all might have.
Are there any questions? Board?
Excellent. I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, please, Jim?
So on the procurement side of natural gas, and ComEd and Ameren, for example, the Illinois Power Authority or agency, I can't remember if it's authority or agency, buys the power for ComEd or Ameren that then is resold to customers. That's not done at NICOR. Do you have folks that buy the gas? Is that correct?
At NICOR, it's about 50-50. So about 50% of our annual throughput, we buy on behalf of our customers and resell. About 50%, it's customers that have chosen to buy their own gas. And so, again, and it's actually 45% of our throughput. We call them transport-only customers. They buy their gas, they're responsible for bringing it to the system, that we deliver it to them at the end. Whereas 55% of our load, we're actually buying that gas on their behalf. We resell it to them at cost. And then annually, there's a prudency review with the Illinois Commerce Commission to make sure our purchases are correct.
Yeah, let me reframe my question. I'm thinking more of the residential customers.
Yeah.
Do residential customers have the ability to buy their own gas? I don't think so. Do they in the NICOR system?
They do through an aggregator. So we do have a customer choice program is kind of the generic term for it, where there's probably 4 or 5, do you know, Somali, 4 or 5 marketers that can aggregate load with the customers, with the residential customers. And, there's a lot of customers that participate there. So you can't, as a residential do it yourself as one, but you can buy from one of these marketers that are aggregating and compete against each other for that. It is, yeah.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, there's, it might be more, might be about a half dozen. The number goes up and down. You have a couple that come in, they'll do it for a couple of years, they leave, but generally there's a good half dozen that are participating in that market. They compete. They offer different product, fixed price products, if you like that, variable index. So yeah, most customers that do that are doing that because it enables them to control their costs through fixed price or something like that.
But do most residential customers not do that though? Do
Yes.
they buy through you
Yes,
or through NICOR?
the vast majority buy directly from us. And I think, I'm going to speculate here, but I think one of the reasons for that is when you look at the opportunity you have to save compared to signing up and whatnot. I think that potential savings hasn't been enough to really get to that threshold, but it does ebb and flow. So there's sometimes people just don't want to go through the trouble of making the change, but it is open to people.
Storage. So it wasn't clear to me from your table, how much of, let's just to make it simple, take an extreme case. You have your peak load. And how many hours or days of peak load gas do you have in storage? Let's say on average or at the beginning of the peak season?
At the beginning of the season, at the beginning, we can actually do more, than what we say in our design is based around January when it's been tapped out a little bit, but so kind of starting big picture, we have about I would say 40 days.
Okay.
Overall, but the reality is at true peak volumes, we probably have 3 or 4 days at that true peak.
Okay.
And then it starts falling off very slowly.
But for a normal winter, January, you've got like 40 days worth.
That's right. That's right. 40 peak days worth. That's right.
Still,
Could you touch on NICOR's position on renewable gas? So it's like biogas or even like hydrogen, either based on corporate strategy into the future or perhaps by demand, maybe from other companies that are starting to ask for that.
Yeah, we love renewable gas. We've got a tariff out there to try to attract more of that onto our system. And we did, I know we had one that came online last year, a large landfill up in Rockford. We've got another 1 or 2 in the works. Somali might know that too in the works.
Well, we have 2 existing and 1 in the works.
Yeah. So 2 existing. Okay, thank you. So yeah, we're trying to attract as much of that onto our system as we can. We believe in it. There's different carbon values for the different types of renewable gas out there. Landfills, they've been flaring in for decades, so you get combustion value for that. Whereas you need something like a digester to get true methane offsets. But we also have a team, that looks for actually investing in those. They're tough to get because there's a lot of people chasing them. But what we're trying to do is to facilitate by doing everything we can to incentivize the landfills to be able to have a connection point on our system.
I ask, one second. So when we talk about renewables, is there a difference in the gas, renewable gas versus what you get around?
The composition is not all that different. It's still primarily methane. It's mostly the source. So when we talk about renewable gas, we're generally talking about gas that is, it's coming from a source where it would otherwise be wasted in some way, shape, or form, either vented or flared off. And what we're doing is we're bringing it into our system so it can displace other
So
sources.
it's not cleaner gas, it's the
It's
same
not.
gas.
It's fundamentally the same.
It's not-
gas. Yeah,
it's
That's
the
right.
Same construction.
That's right.
Is what I was.
It's methane. That's right.
Methane.
That's right. That's right.
Let me get Jim first. Go ahead.
So I can't remember which winter it was, 2019, 2022, but we were in pretty deep doo-doo in that January. I remember PJM had called an emergency 3 years ago or longer, maybe 6 years ago. And in fact, there were some power outages in Michigan that occurred during this cold winter. And at that point in time, 3 years ago or 6 years ago, there were far more baseload power plants running, coal-fired power plants primarily, which are now shut down. So if we get into another situation like that, where it's a dead of winter, it's nighttime, solar's not performing, batteries have run out, and we don't have natural gas facilities, and maybe some wind farms are operating, maybe not. It could be a calm evening along with nighttime, where wind farms are not performing, solar's not performing, batteries have now run out. When you have conversations with regulators about the future of gas, which is oriented towards eliminating natural gas as a source of fuel, and see just calling for shutdowns of some of these gas turbines as early as 2030, this almost seems like an infeasible situation to me. So when you talk with, I don't know if you speak with regulators yourself or you have your folks do, how does that conversation go? This almost seems like an impossibility to me for us to live where we live in this northern climate. Baseload is getting shut down. We have adherents in Naperville that want to shut coal plants down in Naperville, or excuse me, in Illinois. I don't see wind, solar, and batteries solving that problem. So how does that conversation go with regulators in the state?
I think our approach really has been, and we're, year and a half into that future gas proceeding. And I think our priority has really been around education. And I think one of the things we're really trying to stress there is you don't get the story if you're looking at annual averages, where your energy's coming from. You really have to look at the mix under those design peak kind of conditions. That's where reliability lives in those conditions. And I think we're trying to address it through education, because I do think that a lot of these conversations, they're very well intended. You know, these are genuine beliefs that various stakeholders have. And so I think our belief is that education is a friend here, and just trying to get as much of that information out there as possible, not just how our system works and how the grid works when it's over, how do things like heat pumps work? You know, those end use devices, do they do what people think they do? And again, we're not saying they don't work, they do. We're saying you have to look at how much energy they draw under these kinds of reliability conditions. So our approach really has been to focus on reliability, on education. And I think the more we can have a real honest dialogue about what is realistic to expect, I think our hope is that in the end, the physics, the values, all those things will eventually carry the day. That's kind of how we approach it.
So to just follow up on that question and your answer. So when people see the difference in the amount of energy that's drawn and the ability of the one to respond and ability of the other to respond, is there any impact on that conversation saying the importance of gas that we're going to eliminate?
I think most are surprised initially, and because there's so much more awareness around the electric grid than there's a gas grid, because it's buried, and it just has tended to be quieter over the years. So I think the initial reaction is that it's surprised that it's that big of a difference, both annually and in the hour. And I think you just have to expect different stakeholders. It's going to take a little while to absorb it. And what makes me feel good about it is it's something I very much believe, and I believe in this. And so it makes for good conversations. And I actually enjoy talking about this subject with a lot of people, because I think as people get more educated, everybody wants reliable energy. Everybody wants it. And I think there's some ambitions about what we would like to see. And we just have to mesh that up with what is real and when is it real and how do we plan that together?
Excellent. Dan?
Yeah, I strongly believe in diversity of energy sources. I wonder, do you think there's any future for the hydrogen blending?
I think there are applications for this future. Hydrogen has a lot of colors. You've probably heard people talk about there's the blue and the green and the pink and the gray. And I think that there's more potential with some of those than the others, but let's talk about the green for a minute, because that's the one that people talk the most about. Electrolyzers. This is where you're taking a green energy like wind or solar and using that to create hydrogen. That's what people talk about most common. One of the challenges with that is the green power is very expensive as it is. So, if you look at, I'm just going to throw out some round numbers here, to make green hydrogen, you're probably talking about something that lands around $40 per MMBTU. That's against the gas price that is $3 to $4. So it's going to come in about 10x. And the reason is because that green electricity has a value. Now, if you were in a certain market where you had excess, different story. California is an example. California, if you look at their grid, you can see this at the Cal ISO. During the daytime, you see they're awash with solar. A lot of times they have more than they need. They're actually load shedding some of them. If you could take that and redirect it, to a hydrogen facility, that would be a way where all of a sudden it's going to be competitive, because that power is going to have a really low price. Here's the challenge. The challenge is that electrolyzers are not meant to cycle like that. No thermal facility is intended to cycle like this. You got to deal with that. And so you think about that. To get to that point, you've got to have enough of that out, enough green power out there, that you have way more than you need at certain points of times. In the end, it doesn't turn out to be a commodity opportunity. It turns out to be a energy storage opportunity. That's.
I was actually specifically talking about, there's people talking about blending hydrogen in.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think there's the application.
Okay.
Our electric affiliates has done a lot of testing of that. down. I know they've done 5, I think they might even gone up to 20, so I do think there's potential there. I think, ongoing, it's really gonna come down to economics as far as how big is it gonna be? What's the cost of that? What are the benefits of that? That's. I think we're gonna.
Yes.
Go
ahead.
I guess with that, talking about California, the environment's slightly different than Illinois, given the amount of sun and that they, but, when you're talking about education, I think Dan had pointed this out before where he contrasted, or I shouldn't, maybe you didn't actually contrast it, but, I talked about the state of Washington, keeping natural gas as opposed to the state of Illinois, with CEJA and regulations, et cetera. Do you ever get into talks with that of like contrasting what's being proposed or already done to what other states have done, and given the demographics of the like Seattle legislature and Illinois legislature?
We do, but I appreciate this. I don't think we've looked at Washington State so much. We tend to look at like Massachusetts. We look at them very closely. That's a state that we look at. We're trying to keep an eye out on, what states that are moving forward with aggressive decarbonization plan. What does it look like? What's working? What's not? And what we see in a lot of programs are now they're trying to get more gas into some of those systems because they've had some restrictions for a while. There are things to be learned from every program, pluses and minuses. So we look at a number of states. I'm not familiar with Washington's though.
Can I, since it was referencing me, what happened was there's a former Naperville resident who's a federal judge out there, and he was the one that told me that it's not a partisan issue because it was all the Democrats that live in Seattle that voted to keep natural gas. And that was the interesting point I was trying to make to the council at a previous point, is that the electricity, they have cheap hydropower, but natural gas, Seattle depends on natural gas for the heating. And they even though they voted for Kamala Harris at a much higher level than Illinois did, like twice Illinois' margin, they still voted to save natural gas. So to remind people that it's not a partisan issue, this natural gas thing, because a lot of people think it is. That was my point, I think, in council a couple of times ago.
Sure.
Very interesting.
So it might be
Yeah.
worth you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Tim, can
Yeah,
I just add
please.
something really quick?
Please.
There's 13 states that have started the future of gas proceedings that we now have in Illinois. And we have leaned on some of the outcomes in some of those states like Colorado, Minnesota, Massachusetts, as Tim had mentioned, because they're actually at a stage where, there are some outcomes. So we have looked at that as we go through our future of gas proceedings. So it's very helpful, but also interesting to see how every state is distinctly different in many ways. So it's not really an apples to apples comparison due to climate, due to just different components. Here in Illinois, we have a lot of industrial customers.
Sure.
We're in, 5th largest state with industrial customers. That is a really important aspect.
I guess when you do it, like looking at these state comparisons, those who had moved away in a decarbonization attempt, did it seem like the prices for their consumers had gone up?
That's hard to say because I feel like, we can probably look at California as probably the best test case because I think they're far enough along.
Sure.
And I think we all see what's happened there.
Right.
I think others are probably heading that way, but not quite there.
That seems to correlate with like when CES came in and spoke from their experience with.
I overlooked a stat that I had on one of the slides, but we looked at, if someone fully electrified, this 2023 data, at that time, gas prices were higher. That was Ukraine, stuff was going, gas prices were higher, power prices were lower. At that time, if you fully electrified, you would spend that upfront money, which ComEd's numbers are $55,000 average upfront to convert. And in that year, it would have been about twice the cost just for the energy to run that. So, you're saving energy because there's a lot of times where you are a lot more efficient. Not at peaks, but you're saving up front. On the other hand, you're paying 4 to 5 times price. So, that's what we saw here back in 2023 was about 2x. The actual numbers on that slide for reference. But I do think we are seeing it like in the Massachusetts program, certainly, that was a factor. One of the things that offsets that though are some of these states have very, very large subsidies and incentives. And a lot of times, what the consumer is seeing isn't necessarily their cost.
Right. They have to pay for it one way or the other, whether they see it or don't.
Yeah.
I mean, in the case of federal, I had mentioned this at council meetings where in the case of federal subsidies, you don't see it show up in your income taxes. And as a result, the federal government ends up printing money. So you pay for more than your consumer prices. So.
Any other questions?
One more.
One more.
There are large consumers of natural gas in Illinois that don't use it for heat. They use it for chemical purposes. In the future of gas environment, where state legislature is trying to restrict natural gas consumption. How do those large industrials fit into this story?
I think they've generally been very active in these proceedings. Because it really is. I mean, they have to have that to be viable. So they've actually been very active in the proceedings and have weighed in pretty heavily on that. That it's really critical, to their competitiveness, their viability. So they've been very active in the cases, in the proceeding, I should say.
Farmers too.
Yeah.
They use it to dry their crops.
Yeah, that's right. They've been active as well.
Okay, well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
You have,
I
thought,
appreciate
oh,
it.
yeah,
Thank
please
you.
go ahead.
Lots of discussion around baseload generation here, perhaps starting to build our own resilience here for whatever reason. Lots of discussion about doing peakers, right? Transmission peaks, generation peaks, things like that. Can you just briefly walk us through the process from the NICOR side to connect to the transmission system, and then understanding that we would have to procure gas on our own through hedges and things like that. But from a technical perspective, interconnection.
Absolutely. At Somali, if it's okay, I'll start this out. Somali leads our new customer, our customer solutions area. So she can certainly fill in the important tactics here. But essentially, a couple quick questions. Rough size? Do you have a rough size?
From our previous conversations, we had looked at the north side of town and we were told there's about 40 megawatts capacity up there.
Okay.
From the NICOR folks, but we also had looked at it from a Springbrook perspective, waste treatment plant, looking at, kind of doing a cost comparison between running additional electric lines for source diversity versus putting in our own natural gas generation for source diversity.
Yeah, we would start with looking at where you needed that, how much, hourly takes, and then the pattern you needed it, like peaking base. And that would give us an idea of where lines could feed it, where they come from. Somali, you can probably do a much better job than I can with talking about the how.
Doubt that, however. And Brian, we're happy to sit and kind of talk through it in a little bit more detail, but really at a high level, probably notice, we can do like a quick off the cuff, can we serve kind of evaluation based on the load that you would be requesting, right? Like the 40 megawatts. So we can do that high level analysis. And if it's something that makes sense, we would definitely lay out different options of what that could be. You may have different like ramp up timelines and things. So we can talk about that and build a design, based on what works for you all. And honestly, based on that, those different scenarios and the designs, it's really just, the rest is just engineering and construction, right? And a lot of times, depending on, I'd say a load like that, that's that's a pretty decent load, and depending on what's needed. As far as gas infrastructure, it would take some pipe, clearly. And, at the end of the day, it's a meter set that would feed that generation unit, right, or units. And so, all of that is just pretty turnkey up to that, to that point of the on-site generation. And typically we'll see timelines of 18 to 24 months. And that's if all of it is at hand, right? We have some more challenging situations, but in this particular area, that's a pretty decent timeline we see. And we're also seeing that not only, from a data center perspective, a lot of our potential customers coming into Illinois, that's what they're looking for is that speed to market, opportunity. So that's where we land typically.
Pressure, base load volume,
100%.
peak volume, and kind of, load following of how fast they have to come on, what kind of lead time, those are from the 4 days.
And that was my next question, is transmission access, right? So operational flow orders, subject to that.
Yeah.
This type of generation would be subject to an operational flow order or would not?
So the way that we kind of look at it from a gas perspective is, we would have a customized contract typically with a load as large as that, right? And really, and you're looking for firm, type service. So in gas terms, we don't really call it OFO. However, we would have certain degree day applications. And as Tim was kind of really laying out, from a reliable, you can see how we operate in the winter and what reliability looks like. And the fact of the matter is we really haven't had to curb or curtail or have any sort of force majeure, situations with any of our customers in our history, really. And we've come close many times in those winter storms. So, but we have not. So that's a really good record as far as that reliability and resiliency.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not familiar, what is the regulation regarding proximity to residential area for this type of installation, like a gas plant? We are not familiar since we are not a gas utility. Do you have a regulation regarding proximity to residential area?
Aware of, I'm sure there's probably some codes associated with it, and I'm sure there's environmental, Illinois EPA, guidance and regulations as far as permitting, right? But as far as codes and how close it could be, as far as like an actual generation facility, I'm not aware of what.
I think your zoning, the city's zoning would probably be the long pole in it, but
Right, I think the Illinois Pollution Control Board has rules around that too.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
thank you, Chairman. Thank you all again.
Very,
I appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what I want to do before we go to the next one is call for a 10-minute recess.
Right.
And then we will continue. 6:52.
Name's Derek Crook. I worked a lot with him.
Did you?
Years ago, yeah. We did a lot of deals together.
He was my predecessor.
Yeah. He was great. If you ever see him come, I said, well,
I see him all the time.
so much fun. Yeah, I
Start making.
Venture
That's why I
out
don't have one.
all the way out.
Citizen.
Absolutely.
Without a business.
Yeah, please do tell us.
You're doing it, man. Yeah.
I'm gonna give you two.
Okay.
No,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're not supposed to walk here, that's what.
So
I took over his job and I never did it. I mean, I dealt with like
that's because
the night
we
things a lot, but I
it's
never
because I
did
sold
business.
something off that really, was the thing, I worked for.
That's right.
I'm gonna work for people. They sold off business to National came back over, but we own those pipelines that connect. Still
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I used to work all the time. I was always trying to, pay less for it.
When I got there, we had a contract with Fox Sable.
Yeah.
They picked
The
up. all
last
our-
thing I did before I left there, sold all that Fox Sable. And I worked with Derek to kind of make sure that
Tim's got his.
relationship transition. And after that, I didn't have a whole lot.
You're not- you gotta
No,
be
I don't think Blackboard does.
That's why the shares.
But Citgo,
I did a lot
Yeah.
of work with, Freeport and Danfox. So I got to know them really well. We expanded, I don't know, like about a 4 mile segment of pipe down to Lockport so we can get more gas.
That's a big expansion. It's coming soon. You probably know. I was ownership. Most people got some. Yeah.
No, not over like.
Yeah, big plants. Pockets around hydrogen. You know, the hydrogen plant, kind of expanding that, so.
Hydrogen hub stuff. I thought that was better than.
Yeah, it's headed that way. Oh, you're saying. No, you're the grant. You're talking about traditional hydrogen. Whole milk made from
Steam methane reforming
SMR.
without carbon capture.
It's all right. Well,
You got all the.
that's what they're looking at. That's what they're looking at, but anyway, that's, there are new owners at big plants.
The thing you didn't mention about hydrogen is that it's like 1/5 of the heating value of natural gas. You put that
It takes up-
hydrogen in your pipeline, you need more gas to make up for the
Yeah,
lower.
you lose a lot of
BTU
capacity.
content. Yeah, I don't see any future of hydrogen mixed in with natural gas.
It's, you know, might be some dish plays there, but I don't either.
Just all the equipment that's designed for natural, the orifice side of the furnace, things like that, all the
Like, you
effective.
know, make it cheap.
I'm
Cheap.
All right.
But I still don't, you know, I understand the draw, like that, where it becomes.
The other issue is you're gonna power this with intermittent power, which means the load factor of the hydrogen production plant is low.
That's right.
So
You're right. That's right.
if you build a hydrogen
Well,
plant,
like-
you're gonna have to run it flat out. 24/7, 365.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, there's nukes everywhere. We're not gonna have any hydrogen fuel in this
Yeah, the
country.
reason it's
So we're never gonna have capture either.
The reason I brought up the blended gas is because there's one of the, I don't know, Democrats, we've one time. Keep on talking about the blended gas, so that they'll keep the natural gas alive to get to that point.
Well, that's a good reason.
Strategy. That's one of their
That's
strategies.
the only reason.
You did an excellent job. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
But I'm hoping Pritzker's got to be counting every vote.
Roger.
Show him, hey,
Good, yeah.
Good.
look at Seattle, look at, the Democrats in Seattle voted for natural gas. There's got to be a message there. They count every vote, Hopefully, someone can point that out to them someday.
Maybe we'll have some.
You did a good- I love that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we're back.
You're a good guy.
I have not looked at that once.
Yeah, no, you look at the votes, they had a referendum.
Got two kids to live there. So,
Well, they had a referendum, right? And they voted to it was something like to, keep natural gas for at least 40 years, something like that. And it won, even though politically, Kamala Harris won by. Here, she won by 10 votes.
I think,
They've got to look at it.
comments at all the city.
yes, but you know, the interesting there,
Do we use?
but they also want to turn the dams down.
Well, no, I know, I've been pointing it out too. Well, no, that's the thing, but yeah, the electricity's cheap at least.
And it does this, right, you know, this, it does this at the time, and then later on.
Somebody wants.
Yes.
But they also want to turn the dam.
How about you?
But,
So in a world where
Natural's got us.
I grew up here on my street, two houses at one time, the guy who was the president of Nye Gas. lived in his house. Ed Filiatro.
Half my team.
I've worked with his son, John.
Oh, John and I kind of grew up, actually, his daughter, Kim, they lived 2 hours away, every other little.
Yeah.
And then, well, no, this was before that. This is the other one. This is just-
We love it. I think it's probably-
So, in high school, Kim was, my dad was.
Everybody's gonna pay. Yeah.
So I was in high school, Kim was warning about natural gas regulations. I'm right for me. Our projects, really, and Illinois. I thought that was fun. See, John Phillips, I didn't even think about him. I started.
He's in you.
He wouldn't even remember me because he was younger than me. I just remember little Johnny Filiatro.
Yeah.
You know, they know him because no one else can pronounce the name.
I think he's a year younger.
Not that.
Oh, really?
3, I think.
I'm 62. I thought he was.
But thank you so much.
Kim is my age. Kim would be 60.
I don't think he's 61.
Yeah. He might be 60.
I'm older than that, because I started working with him when I was a year or two in. But anyway, he's in the industry. He's in the,
Who are you talking about?
a guy named John Filiatro, whose dad was a big wig at night.
Well, he was the president of Nine Gas back in the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked with son John and agent. I still live in touch with them, and it turns out they were former neighbors.
Wow.
I don't think I swear he was younger than us. I don't think
I was 24.
he had to be a couple years. I'll ask my mom. I don't even know if they're still around. My mom used to see.
Yeah, he loves it.
Everybody's younger than me, so I.
Stop it. You had a grandchild today?
I did, yeah.
Congratulations, Tim.
Finally keep you, but.
No, that's
awesome. I met.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very enlightening.
I think they're
It's an interesting topic. Everybody's saying, you know, we're just trying to keep on the education, just so.
retire. I can't.
You know, focus on the peak hour. Not focus on the peak hour.
That study on the cost of.
Yeah.
Hey,
No, all of the south.
I've seen it, but I haven't actually. I'll ask Lou, if you get it, send it to Lou.
Okay.
Sounds good. And then, because they're gonna do their own, but I think they saw what you guys did. Because they're gonna say, okay.
Yeah.
Want to read them?
Electric bikes.
We printed them out there for.
They're fighting against, up here.
What's actually really interesting for the whole builders will be paying that cost, but we, what are they gonna do? You're stuck with.
Well, no,
They know, they make you all electric, but
Really.
they're gonna have to do something, supplement the heat, or they're gonna have to go, you know, most of these.
Even after-
I think it's 5 tons. Average neighborhood house would be,
so how long?
unless you put in supplement. And therein lies is what I try to really focus on the peak hour is. How much is it gonna run a peak hour to make that? And are you saving anything in your?
Okay.
You're not.
Love it.
Yeah.
And that's, I pointed out to them earlier, and nicely. Where there was some, $5.
So Plainfield.
Then they.
So my neighbors,
Maybe, you know,
literally, backyard neighbor.
No, you're talking about $5.
For Plainfield.
How
they.
Yeah, we've got food, water, energy, next. $5 grocery tax.
When our neighborhood was just growing, I remember like, the real estate. Very sure that.
And it just,
Anyway, I think so.
it's a, if you wanna have fun.
I'll be outside.
Yeah, if you're trying to video that I find out from my Massachusetts. There's some people that put all electric. Let's get those. And that's great. One of the news outlets out there.
It's called Get the Bills or something.
Oh, yeah.
I could probably
Yeah.
find it. I'll ask
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's,
Well, that's, I'll find out.
this was from about,
Yeah.
3 months ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, the interview people, they say, gosh, you know, bills are coming and, you know, it's like twice. Yeah. They just keep coming. So, that's kind of an interesting one for people that look at it. That's in Massachusetts where the incentives.
Right. Well, I participated on the CEC.
Yeah.
For a year, you know. Personal choice. I don't know. Coalition for Energy Choice Commission or whatever. they call it. There's a lot of. Anyway, thanks again. I don't mean to keep you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we ran over.
No,
Much
no, no,
I
it
did.
was really very important.
Apologize.
Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
It's always good.
And
Yes, I get
absolutely.
talking and I lose track of time. So I'm really sorry. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Get it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we definitely see ourselves as partners with you too. You know, we've been forced to electrification on the electric side, but we really see ourselves as partners. You have been ceiling because we're not going to displace that. We just we're part of the story. You know? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me share that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we have to
Thank you.
get there.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
All right, 7:03. We'll bring everybody.
Well, that was excellent. Okay, we're back in opera recess and back.
And stand for my presentation.
Yes, absolutely.
Chairman, this is Mark Edmondson. He runs our control room for the electric utility.
Oh, very nice.
This is a response to a question at the last PUAB meeting where we were asked to outline very briefly our emergency contingency plans related to power outages and how we would handle some requests from PJM or whatnot to curtail energy use.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. As Brian said, my name is Mark Edmondson. I am the supervisor of the electric control room here within the city of Naperville. Prior to my role here at Naperville, I was a transmission operator for Commonwealth Edison, and I was also a generation operator for a wind turbine company in the city of Chicago. So I'm licensed as a reliability coordinator within NERC, so I can operate as a reliability coordinator for the power system anywhere in North America. PJM says that I can operate the transmission system and the generation system within their purview. So with those being said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what happens when everything goes wrong. So I'm also the Cub Master of Pack 565 here in the city of Naperville. And I normally start everything with a skit, but we're not going to do that today. Instead, we're going to have a test. So this is a neighborhood. I have one line feeding it that's at 75% of its capacity. Whether that's a generator over here pushing in at 75% of its capacity, or just the line itself can only carry so much load, and it's at 75% of its ability to carry load. Two lines are feeding this neighborhood. They're both loaded at 75%. When it trips, what happens to the other line? Goes up to 150% capacity. If you're an engineer, it's 130% or so. But the point is that we're now overloaded. To save this line from being destroyed, because it's overloaded, just like when you put too much on an extension cord, that line's going to get hot and it's going to catch on fire. To save that line from being destroyed, we're going to shut it off, and the power is going to go out for this neighborhood. That's load shedding. I could probably just stop there, right? This is something that we do as a last resort. Ideally, we would never be in the situation that we're just in, where one line trips and the other overloads. We would prevent that from ever happening through various measures where we can switch load, transfer load off of one line and move it to another, or we could segment the line up. So if one line trips, just a couple of people go out and everybody else maintains their power. We can shed load within the control room in the city of Naperville. If we have an overload situation in Naperville, the system controllers that we have will shed load to save our power system. ComEd can cut our feed to save load, to save the system. PJM can tell us to cut our feed to save load. PJM talks to IMEA. IMEA tells us we need to bring down this sort of an event. We have guidelines for when that occurs. We have guidelines that tell us how we're going to do it and what areas of town. I'll talk about these here. This is what PJM's process of load shed looks like. We're going to start off here. PJM sees the weather for next week and says it's going to be pretty hot. And they have a computer model of the whole power system. And they say, Historically, when the temperature's at 95 degrees, this is what the power system looks like. They can see that, and they can see little possible overloads that pop up all over the place. And that's when they say, we're going to go into conservative operations. So you had jobs that you were going to take pieces of equipment out of service to work on them. You were going to do some unnecessary but not unimportant maintenance on a generator. We can't do it because it's going to be hot. We cancel all of that work in PJM, and then they run this model again. So now we're a day or so ahead of when this event's going to happen. PJM still sees these constraints that are existing out on the power system, and they contact generators that are offline for maintenance. And they say, get ready to go. You need to be ready within 48 hours to start. And we also say, with the PJM says to its investors and its markets department, we may need to go off market to run our generation. Generally speaking, PJM has a lowest cost. This power plant can generate at a lower cost than this one. So this one gets the preference to run for these situations. They've just told everybody, we may have to suspend market operations. So that gets everybody talking. Hold on, this is gonna cost some money. They also send something out that says, we expect that we're gonna need this much capacity. PJM maintains generation that just sits on the power grid and spins. It doesn't generate electricity. It just spins on the system. So if we need instant power, that generator can provide instant power right away. Bring up the fact that this is what's happening right now. And we say at some point we may need to lower the entire system voltage to lower the power demands on board our system. This all happens a couple of days in advance of all of this. And generally speaking, this fixes whatever problem is there. Day of, we have a hot day. The primary reserves in PJM. So if you have a 1,000 megawatt generator that runs on the system, there are 1,000 megawatts of reserve generation available that can, when that generator trips, these generations can pop in very quickly and pick up the load that needs to be served. We send out a warning that says, you guys get ready because we might need you. We also send out another warning to all of the groups of people within all of the member companies of PJM. Get a warning that says, get your paperwork out. Remember how to do this. We may need to turn your voltage down. And they also say, if it gets bad enough, there's a chance that we're going to ask you to shed load. This is going to be a very specific constraint. They're not going to issue the city of Naperville must shed 50 megawatts of its load. They're going to say, we need 50 megawatts off of this line that's being fed from ComEd. This is as far as we go before PJM starts acting. PJM has a lot of people that they pay. They give a discount on their electricity, large industrial facilities, and they say, if we need you to shut off, we need to be able to call you and have you shut off to save load. That's when they call them right here. They call and they say, you're shutting down. You said you would. And then they call on every generator that's too expensive to run that we warned. We said we were going to turn on these generators, and now is the time. We're going to turn on every single generator on the system and run it. And then deploy all resources is any power that we can buy from MISO or from WEC or any other of our neighboring control zones within PJM. We're bringing all of that in too to alleviate these constraints. And then finally, PJM says, okay, for your specific area, city of Naperville, lower your voltage. And the city of Naperville will lower its voltage by 2.5% by design to reduce the overall load on the system. If that hasn't fixed it, if we're still in a constraint, if we're still in that, these things are loaded at 75% each, and if one trips, we overload and we black out the whole system, then PJM says, dump 50 megawatts of that load so that when one of those lines trips, you're still at capacity. Do it now. And at that point, whoever receives that order has 5 minutes to act on that. That's how PJM. That's how PJM turns our lights on.
Question, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so the voltage reduction, isn't the voltage the same across all of PGM, or can you have a voltage gradient from one part?
No,
to
they
the other?
vary. They vary. So the frequency is identical, but the voltage is, we can bring the voltage down.
Okay,
And then through tap changers.
so those, I said functionally are just knobs at the generators.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Or it can be done on the distribution systems also.
Okay to ask questions while he's
Yeah,
Yeah, please.
Go ahead. Is it okay to
Yeah,
ask questions?
absolutely.
Yes, please.
So a bunch of your conversation is along this line. You know, there's some sort of problem somewhere. PJM tells this generator to start up, or this generator to start up, or this spinning reserve to start putting power into the system. There's many advocates of solar and wind in the
Yes.
world that would just like to do away with any spinning generation. How does that system work when we have nothing but solar and wind and batteries in the world? And solar is producing when it wants to, wind is
Sure.
producing when it wants to, not when you tell it to generate
Sure.
power.
Sure, absolutely. It's windy at night, and that's not when you need the electricity. So the power system stores energy through spinning metal out there on the system. It's torque on the system, in the same way that when you hook a dead battery up to your car, your engine dies down. That spinning metal slows down, and that's where your stability exists on the power system. You cannot ask a wind turbine that's 40 tons that's sitting up on a tin can to give you torque, because it's going to twist itself off the pole. The sine waves generated by a solar panel are digitally formed. Solar is generated in DC. It goes through an inverter and you get a digital sine wave. It also cannot give you torque because you need huge spinning metal objects to maintain that. There's a couple of things that we can do, or there's a few things that ComEd has on their system where they have very fast acting capacitors. When there's a big interruption, these things will instantly fire back and bring up the voltage significantly to help ride through some sort of a fault. So all of this spinning metal can charge itself back up and get itself back up to 60 hertz. Does that answer your question?
I'm asking.
So what do we do if there's no torque?
20 years from now, we shut all our baseload generation down, like coal plants and natural gas plants, and we're relying on what many people would like to be solar, wind, and batteries, and nuclear. Nuclear, I presume, is a good thing to have in this story. But when we're heavily reliable on solar and wind, what does that world look like? Is it just going to happen a lot faster and a lot worse?
Residential load doesn't need the level of stability, with the exception of when your furnace kicks on or your dryer starts and your lights kind of dim a little bit. That's that same torque that I'm talking about there. So that's really the only time where you need that extra energy on the system that's going to prop everything up. So when we lose, if we're running strictly on renewables, residentially, you're going to look at motors that start up slower. You're going to look at things that
that come on slower and that generally just use less energy is going to be the answer. If you don't need a huge motor and you can do it with something smaller or completely eliminate that from the power grid or from your home, then that's where that world exists. In a world where there's no wind, in a world where there's no coal plants and there's no gas plants.
Of course, in that world, everybody's taking from the same grid.
Yes.
Just as the big companies are that have a big draw. So that still is gonna have a big negative impact. I mean,
If I
for
have a
everybody.
if I have a factory,
We're all tied
Yeah.
into the grid.
yeah, if I have a factory and I need that extra resilience to faults, then I'm probably going to have some sort of a maybe I've got my own little gas generator that sits off to the side if I'm allowed to use it. If not, there's recent people are looking more into the older technologies that we used to have before we discovered oil. And then we forgot how to do things that we've done for the last million years. One of them is flywheels. So you can spin up a flywheel in a big underground box and have that just sitting there and rotating. And that's still your spinning metal. You can still use that to provide that resilience and that fault, that ride through of a big incident that happens. And I would say, honestly, that's probably where it would go, is flywheel farms. We would have wind farms, and they would have flywheel farms, and hopefully they're buried underground. So when they come apart.
So on May 25th, in New Orleans,
Uh-huh.
there was a transmission line that was out of service.
Uh-huh.
And a 600 megawatt nuclear power plant failed unexpectedly, came down unexpectedly. It crashed the whole system. The entire city of New Orleans, or not the entire city, but 100,000 accounts. I don't know what percentage of New Orleans that was lost its power
Mhm.
with 3 minutes warning.
Mhm.
And they're in MISO. And according to NERC, MISO's in a very precarious situation in terms of having dispatchable power
Yes.
available when it's needed. Of course, that's not us. We're PJM. But PJM is probably only 3 or 4 years down the road from where MISO is. So my question becomes, what if we get 3 minutes warning? And 100,000 accounts is more than all of Naperville, or 60,000 accounts. If we get 3 minutes warning from PJM because one power plant went down somewhere, does that mean the entire city's going to be out? I'm just trying to understand what happened down there, and can that happen here?
No. We will get 3 minutes. If we get 3 minutes more, we won't even get 3 minutes more. We're just going to go dark is the answer. And then we'll have to figure out what happened. But ComEd has sources on the north side of town, south side of town, southeast side of the town, over by Springbrook. We have independent sources. 2 of them are tied to generators. We have the south ends, the remote ends of the lines on the south side of town are tied to, formerly the Will County plant, but that's tied into Dresden. And then we're fed from the north side through Aurora Generation Center via ComEd's big substation. And then there's a lot of energy that runs through on Deal Road, Warrenville and Deal. There's a big substation there called Electric Junction. And Electric Junction is a monster of a substation that takes a lot of generation and redistributes it. And then in the south, there's also another, the Lyle substation, which is out on Route 355, kind of 355 and Ogden, I believe. That also receives a tremendous amount of generation that feeds in from a different source in a different location. So if we lose a generator, then that shouldn't happen because PJM should be prepared for the loss of the generator or at least if they knew that we were going, if a contingency causes a blackout, then PJM has a plan for that. They have a plan for it. This is going to black out. So either get ready or we're going to have more generation ready to go. So when this generator trips, this one will immediately pick the load back up. If that line became completely unavailable within the city of Naperville, we can switch to redistribute where we're receiving our energy throughout all the Naperville power grid so that we can source all of our energy from the other side of town. Does that help? Or
I'm just thinking more of a widespread, loss of generation. That's not just
a system, like a system-wide blackout where,
entirety.
yeah.
And let's say there is a massive blackout because of grid failure.
Mhm.
I would presume hospitals have their own generators. And what happens? What happens if there's a loss of power in Naperville? How many entities, critical entities, have their own generation on site to take care of their patients or things like that? Are you aware of those statistics?
There are.
I don't want to put you on a corner.
No, it's fine. If you believe that if you've lost your source of energy, that it would cripple your industry and that you couldn't, and it would be a catastrophic event for you, then you have enough generation to maintain the minimum standards that that's so
it does.
the city of
Everett
so
Hospital have
we
its
in
own
Naperville.
generators? Does Everett Hospital have its own generators?
Yes.
So that's how they would survive a situation like that. Are there other, like, do fire stations have their own generators or? So every critical,
Yes.
every critical thing.
Except for Springbrook.
Mhm.
Huh?
All the water supply sites have backup generation, lift stations have backup generation, but Springbrook does not.
All municipal locations have it except for.
Okay, so the critical functions in Naperville would function if there was a kind of a mass
It helps shed
blackout.
load.
Yes. We've actually looked at using the generation that's attached to city buildings to do.
At the what?
We've actually looked at using the generation that is attached to city buildings as demand response. However, those generators are not permitted to be run for anything other than emergency use. And demand response is not an emergency use. Yeah.
Or different scrubbers.
Yep, they do have different emissions. There's like 50 hours a year you can run or whatnot, so.
This is our new one. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. If we're called upon to shed load, our goal is to provide the maximum amount of effect of maybe that's not the right word. We want to shed the least amount of load for the most amount of value. So if there's a problem on the north side lines, it doesn't matter how much load we shed on the south side of town because it's not going to affect anything. But if we shed load on the north side of town, right next to where the constraint is, then we knock out a couple of people's houses as opposed to half of the city, and it alleviates the constraint. And we've worked all of this out. Go ahead, Ron. So we've worked all of this out on when a specific line is in trouble. This is where we start first. Just going to, these are color coded as the colors of the rainbow, red being the first one and violet being the last one. If we get a call to reduce load, we have charts and tables in the continuity of operations plan that have been published that will explain this feeder, this specific circuit on our system will reduce 1.5 megawatts of load, et cetera. When we get the call, if we get the call, and I hope I've convinced you that we're not going to get that call. If we get that call, we're going to open here. We're going to drop this feeder, In this one, if the constraint is over here, if the constraint is up here, then we're gonna drop up here. If there's a constraint down here, well, this is gonna do the work for us. It's gonna stay like that for 2 hours. Then we're gonna move to the orange colors here. And we're going to restore the red. And if the constraint has still not been relieved after 4 hours, then we're going to continue on throughout the system. We're going to just follow all the way through. And when we get to the other end of it, there's 8 specific areas that will lose their load. When we get to the last one, we'll go back to the first one. If we're still in that place. And those are your rolling blackouts. This would be an event that would be very unusual. I don't believe that PJM has done rolling blackouts at all. The last time PJM shed load was due to a catastrophic failure of a line a couple of years ago in Ohio after a big storm. They had one line that was out because of a storm, and then the next night another storm came through, knocked out the second line. They had one left and they had to dump load.
So hearing experiences in California where people are at restaurants and the restaurants go dark and dark.
Yeah.
And not brown, dark. And then they have their emergency lights come on and they ask everybody, could you please get out of the restaurant? And they just drive to somewhere else in the city that has power and go to that restaurant. And it seems to be a common.
So that was that 2000s Enron. Is this kind of what you're talking about? Like that early 2000s?
Just 3 months ago, my family, I had family over there and they experienced that. And the local people said, oh, this happens all the time. So I'm thinking if we did something that didn't give us the consistency and the torque, the momentum to keep it and to go to some other type of energy, the renewable energy, would that be a similar risk as maybe Spain and Portugal? Did they have wasn't it a momentum thing for them also?
Yeah, well, their lines were loaded up with solar and wind.
Right.
And then a big cloud came across and it shut off the solar. And then their lines went from having enough power to not having enough power instantly. And the system just opened all of its breakers.
And that's part of the momentum thing also.
Yeah, not having that ability to ride through. So that could be resolved. That's all I've got.
Thank you very, very much. Really
Appreciate it.
appreciate that. Got a nice presentation. Okay, so our next are the reports that we will receive. And do you want me to list the numbers? First, received electric preliminary, so the 25-1162.
Lots of charts and graphs here for the PUAB to see and soak in. But nonetheless, cash position, electric operating fund, you will see fines, fees and surcharges. We are slightly above budget here, about halfway through the year, July 31st, a little bit over half, but nonetheless, large projects coming through. So you'll see the fine, fees and surcharges higher than expected. Charges for service about halfway through the year, 57%. As you can see, there is no concern here from the finance department. Happy to walk through any of the other charts, graphs, or anything like that, but I'll entertain any questions that come up. Looking at our capital plan, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, if I just continue. to
Yes,
scroll
please.
through.
Would you please
looking
roll
at
through them all?
Looking at the capital plan here, I would say the biggest concern overall is material availability, right? We've talked about transformers, we've talked about cable, we've talked about wire, we've talked about everything under the sun that's required to operate an electric utility. And I would say that the supply chain in some areas is better than it was before, and in some areas it's worse than before, right? So now, previously we were dealing with supply chain issues related to COVID. Now we are dealing with supply chain issues related to data center development, right? So we issued, purchase orders for, 138,000 volt circuit breakers, 138 kV circuit breakers. The first batch estimated about a year to be delivered, the second batch about 3 years. And that's been explicitly told to us that it is because data centers need them and are paying whatever they want to, whatever they want to charge, they'll pay. So, insert the same problems we've been having and just change the cause. But nonetheless, we are on track with our capital plan. Let's talk about our city and our industries. Everyone turn your head to the left. And, there are a couple items of note here. So, our SAIDI has gone down significantly. Our KD, which is the amount of time to troubleshoot an outage, has gone down significantly from last year. I will say that we've had some problems of late, in the past month or so, in the Hobson West subdivision. We have had splice failures. And then we also, this past weekend, we had a 34,000 volt cable go bad. A splice went bad in a manhole at Washington and Deal. We got that came in about 4 AM. We had crews on site almost immediately. They worked through Sunday to identify where the cable was bad, where the splice was bad. Replaced the splice Sunday night, tested the cable. Monday, put it back into service, and then we had substation equipment fail on Monday evening. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is there have been several customers who have been very unhappy in the Hobson West subdivision. They've experienced anywhere between 4 and 6 outages over the past couple of weeks. Even though the outages this past weekend were about 1 minute in length because our substation automation takes a look at voltage, moves things around, and encloses and operates on its own. Understanding it's very disruptive when power goes out. We have a couple pronged plan to go and attack that subdivision. We have crews out there starting today, using some new test equipment, very low frequency VLF testing of cable and splices. This should be able to tell us if we have premature equipment failure, also known as cables are failing underground before their life expectancy is over. So those cables out there are anywhere from 2 to 20 years old. We should get 30, 40, 50 years out of cable that's well maintained. We don't overload our system. So residents in that neighborhood will see us out there over the next couple of weeks, and we'll be testing all the cable spans out there and determining if it's premature cable failure, bad splices, whatnot. So we are doing something about that.
Before you just go on, just because not in defense or the actual situation is that we've had work done in the past that was not the way you would have allowed it to be now.
Yeah, we believe that,
Those splices.
and Mark can correct me, I believe there were 2 splice failures in Hobson West over the summer. And so, yes, we had put cable in the ground, not necessarily temperature dependent. I would say it's just, sometimes things happen and then something else happens. But the events of the past weekend impacted the same customer, but they were very far away, right? So we use 138 kV for, supply to the city. Then we step it down to 34,000 volts. Then we step it down to 12,000 volts into subdivisions. Then we step down, generally 120, 240 to residences. And so, as you have higher voltages, those issues then manifest themselves to all lower voltages. Whereas if you have a 12 kV cable failure, it's a generally localized issue. So unfortunately, those customers have seen not only splice failures, but they've also seen a macro issue. But we're working on all of that. And so the line has been in service since Tuesday.
Yes.
With no issues.
Yeah.
And we don't expect any issues going forward. So I just wanted to be fully transparent with the PUAB. These numbers will go up. We've had some outages. Renewable energy program, Mayor will talk about the renewable energy program.
Yes, we have seen a constant increase in electric vehicles in the city, above 6,500 vehicles in the city. Uh, Smart thermostats is been going well, been consistent year over year. We have started giving away, besides light bulbs, we have the smart plug also. I don't have, I could not quantify that because the amount of the giveaways are not there yet. So once I have a good number, I will calculate the kilowatt hour savings doing that. As far as solar installations, it has slowed down the first half of this year, but we're still, trending upward, almost a little bit more than 1,100. And we have reached more than 10 megawatts worth of solar installations in the city. As you can see.
Nameplate?
Huh?
Nameplate?
Nameplate, yes.
Solar
What's
production,
Steve, so if there was a line on here of nameplate capacity, where would that line be? 10 megawatts, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that would be 10 megawatts, yes.
Oh, this is kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
yeah, so
No, you're talking, the one on the bottom is talking about the kilowatt hour solar produced
Yeah.
from all the solar installations in the city.
Yeah.
Any,
so the next item will be the IMEA meeting minutes. If there's any questions on previous IMEA board meetings, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I could provide a brief explanation of the last board meeting, which the manager's memorandum went out this afternoon and is now public on the city's website with a summary of that meeting. But in general, IMEA has secured 29 contract extensions out of the 32 existing members. Naperville, St. Charles, and Fairfield did not execute contract extensions. Instead, at the last Tuesday city council meeting, I was directed to negotiate with Mike DeSanto on behalf of the city with IMEA on 9 points. Those 9 points have been circulated to the public, and we are in the process of drafting an amendment to the contract, which will be sent to IMEA hopefully next week. At that point, IMEA can either counter or, has an option to say no, thank you. But that's where we are with the IMEA contract negotiations. We are also looking to release an RFP in the next month or so, which will ask for renewable energy pricing, zero carbon energy pricing from various vendors. We're looking at including solar, wind, nuclear, other, and then battery storage pricing as well. We'll look at a variety of different options.
Brian, what's the due date, do you think, for your RFP results or RFP bids to come back? What's the due date do you think you might have on that?
Likely late October, early November. If all the stars and, align.
And then there'd be some sort of, I'm just trying to understand how the process works. You get those bids back. Is that like a sealed bid opening thing that you do, or is it just email, or I don't know how that
Yeah,
works?
it'll be a sealed bid opening. It's typically done through Demand Star. So Demand Star is our bid platform. So all of our bids will go out through Demand Star. Demand Star manages the process, submit your sealed bids. Then we'll open them up. We'll determine if the vendor is qualified, and then those bids. Council is asked to see those bids, and they would like those bids along with whatever we negotiate with IMEA at the same time.
But will those bids be made public to everybody?
Yes.
So there's no issues of non-disclosure that you're gonna waive, you're gonna not allow non-disclosure of pricing
That's
to be
currently.
part of the bid process.
That's currently what we're talking about, right? There's a lot of public interest in this process. There's a lot of public interest in the numbers. And so what we're discussing as staff is the potential to include a no non-disclosure statement in there. So I've spoken here and at council related to our discussions with Constellation, NextEra. They're all protected under a non-disclosure agreement. I can't disclose pricing. I can't disclose really anything other than we're talking to them. And so we are currently contemplating as staff whether or not to have a complete no non-disclosure agreement as part of this.
Now with the, you'd mentioned earlier, the timeframe of getting the contract legally written. The
The
format,
amendment, yes.
the amendment, and then it would be sent to them. And, but it's with, I don't want to say the understanding or the agreement, previous agreement. It's not gonna, they're not gonna make a decision on anything right now.
IMEA has stated that they will not, IMEA staff will not do anything out without the board approval. Right? So the way that I envision this working is that, you know, the city of Naperville drafts up an amendment to the contract, right? That's probably the best way to handle the situation. So all 32 members have the same contract. There'll be an amendment written. We'll send that to IMEA. IMEA can have comment period, we'll negotiate. And then that would likely have to go to the IMEA board for their approval before it comes back to the city of Naperville.
Timing wise, that will be after we've received our bid.
The next IMEA board meeting, I believe, is October 21st and 22nd. And then after that, it would be December. So those would be the opportunities for the board to vote on anything that IMEA staff would recommend to the board. And then that would come back to the city.
So those dates are pretty close. You said the end of October for our RFP results and then October 22nd for the IMEA board meeting.
That's correct. And then the next IMEA board meeting would be in December.
So end of October, we'll receive a lot of information, IMEA's response to our contract.
Sorry to interrupt, but does anybody own a BMW parked on?
Yeah.
Reserve 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, your emergency alarms.
Oh, all right, thanks.
You didn't say old Acadia.
So
So end of October, we'll get all this information kind of all at once, like almost within a week of each other, we'll be getting the bids. And these bids are related to the MDR presumably, right?
Yes.
And then IMEA's response to our 9 requirements or demands, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, that would be the earliest we would get a formal response from IMEA.
Doesn't the city council want to weigh in on costs and things, and that maybe they would want to do certain things that they're asking for?
That's why they've asked us to bring the contract amendment as well as the MDR costs at the same time. So,
question.
yes,
Will the other municipalities, would they presumably be under the amended agreement if there is an amended agreement?
not automatically. They would have to vote to adopt that amendment.
Okay.
And all along, IMEA has stated, and IMEA Board of Directors has stated, the longer that a member takes to sign the contract, if resource decisions are made and those cause a premium to the other members, if someone were to come in late, then a premium would be assessed. So there's a potential that a premium could be assessed, yes.
When is the RFP out there now or?
It's not.
How long
It is
before
not.
it goes out?
There's discussion about having the council vote to approve the RFP at their September 16th council meeting.
So that's given the vendors about a month and a half to put their proposals together.
Yes. IMEA Treasury Report, one item of significance here, IMEA was able to refinance their bonds related to Prairie State and Trimble County. About 23 million in net present value savings. That's about $1 on the energy rate. So we'll be seeing that, you know, as soon as the bonds close. IMEA had their annual audit. Baker Tilly presented. They had no issues with their audit. Everything was clean. Audit can be found on the IMEA website along with their annual report.
Question on that bond savings. Well, you said it's like $1 we're saving, or a dollar a meg.
Megawatt hour. $1 a megawatt hour.
1%.
So there's that savings, and at the end of this year, we're free of the $2.50 penalty we've been paying for a decade, right?
That's correct.
How does that work? Does that an instantaneous reduction in people's electric bills, or is that just kind of go into a bank account that you would use then for the next rate
No, it's
calculation?
instantaneously realized on the bills. And I will use the word instantaneous, and I mean within 6 months, it'll start showing up because we have a purchase power adjustment, right? That smooths out any spikes or any drops. So over 6 months, it'll start to gradually go lower.
Okay, so citizens will start seeing the benefits of these things within 6 months or so.
Correct. I would ask, IMEA continues to look to add solar to their portfolio. They're working on some Department of Energy PACE grants. We've outlined those in the previous notes. They're also looking at a 2.5 megawatt project in Chatham, Illinois. And then they provided updates on the PJM capacity auction, which closed 22% higher than the 25-26 capacity auction. So it's expected that ComEd rates will continue to rise while Naperville's won't. That's all I have.
Do we need to vote on that, receive it?
Would you like to? Yeah, are there any questions on the transmission bills? That was something that
Any questions?
was asked for, and so now the easiest way to disseminate that information is to just include it in the PUAB packet.
Any questions?
Take a motion.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to accept these reports. To accept. Roger. Second? Second, any discussion? Discussion about it? We'll vote. Those who say to receive, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passed. Unanimous.
Water's up next, right?
Water's next.
Right, fantastic. Good evening, everyone. I'll try to get through my reports quickly. We do have a presentation on Springbrook that was requested by Board Member Falar. So, yes, sir.
Can we get this in electronic form?
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it in the packet when it went out last week, so I apologize for that. Request kind of came in late, talking to Jim about that, but we got it ready for tonight, and we'll share that with you electronically. First item is our CIP report. Just a couple of notes on formatting here, since we do have some new board members. We have multi-year projects typically, especially in water and CIP. So you see an encumbrance that typically represents the total value of the contract. For example, if I have a $12 million project that's over 3 years, the budget value will be 4, but the encumbrance will be 12. So that could be confusing for folks. Who are like, why is it more than the budget? Typically, does account for multi-year projects. We have a few of those. Most of them are not multi-year projects, but we do have the multi-year projects. It can kind of look odd as to why that encumbrance is so high compared to the budget number. That would be why. Another formatting quirk is when we have a budgeted item, for example, our vehicles, I think you'll see the first 7 or 8 items or vehicles, there's actually a 0 budget, but that's because the budget item is in Public Works because it's a fleet item, but the funding source is the water utility. So it doesn't show on the budget, but it actually will hit our account eventually. So that's just a quirk in the formatting. So that's, it confused me as to why they're showing up as 0. So I had to get to the bottom of it. So that's just a quirk with how we export some formats out of Munis. So I just want to make that aware because it can be a little confusing. I want to point out, especially with a few board members. I think I've made these comments in the past, but since we have some new board members tonight, I kind of wanted to point that out, that those quirks are there. We try to work around them the best we can. Sometimes we're limited by the software we have and how it exports data. On the CIP front, our biggest issue I would like to point out is we have 2 of our larger projects that are at risk for delays. These 2 projects are the water main project at Washington and Ogden. I think most of you probably have driven through that intersection this summer. And we're, dealt with the traffic and rerouting there. The Ogden piece will likely get done in time, but the Washington piece is looking like it will need to be pushed to next year. We don't want to push the contractor to continue work too late in the season. If we need to patch the roadway before snow and ice come, we want to make sure we button that road up as it's heavily traveled. And we don't want to have any issues. So we will actually stop the contractor and push the work to next year. They did receive a liquidated damages notice because they are supposed to be done by October 31st. So we are working with them on that issue, and we will likely negotiate something, probably extend out the date because they're a good contractor. They're getting their work done. Work quality is good. They had some crew issues where they lost a superintendent and they went from 2 crews down to 1 crew. And we understand that happens, but we still have contract requirements and obligations and they're on the hook for it. So we'll be reasonable if they're reasonable. That's kind of the way we work on it. So
That's a good question.
absolutely.
It's kind of related to you, but not related to you. I got stuck in the traffic jam right there.
Yeah.
Heading east on Ogden.
Yes, sir.
It's quite extensive, so much so that people are cutting through neighborhoods to avoid it. Do you work with the traffic department to
Absolutely.
adjust timing of lights when you know this is
Well,
going
the
to
timing of lights is not something that we do. What we do is we submit the traffic control plan to the TED group here. They're our traffic experts. And they evaluate the traffic control plan to make sure it's in compliance with best practices. If any additional timing changes on the lights need to be done, that is not a decision that we would make. That would be a TED decision. But I'm not familiar that if we did do any timing changes, I'm not aware of any. But I will say that despite the heavy construction, the traffic control in that location was pretty spot on this year. We were actually very pleased because it's a pretty heavily traveled intersection and we were doing some big work. And I will say that they did a good job considering all the constraints that they had. But we do coordinate with TED because they're our traffic experts and they review the plan and we pivot if there's a problem, if we see other issues. We have asked TED to go out, periodically to make sure that the site distances are looking good because sometimes they'll store material at a corner. You can't see around that material. So we're always cognizant of making sure that safety is a priority and we work with our partners at TED to make sure that the traffic safety there is in compliance with best practices. So I don't know that answer, but I can check with Jen to see if they did any tweaks, but I doubt it.
if they're not adjusting the timing of those lights, it seems like that would be a good idea. To
I'll
give
talk to Jen
the
about it.
east-westers a little bit more time. Maybe that would just make it worse for the rest of them.
There's always a
Yeah,
ripple effect when you do
Yeah,
those kinds of things,
yeah.
but
but there was a lot of cut throughs going on in neighborhoods I saw because of that backup, so it doesn't.
I actually,
good thing either.
I actually do it myself, because I go east, I actually cut up Ogden, Eagle up to Bower, and I can kind of go around it. So I've been doing it myself. But so those are the issues on the capital side with the CIP report. Any questions around that? Okay, we'll move on to the next report, which is our state
Please.
report.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Please. You go on the
First, I just want to point out, we included some new dashboards that we're using in the water operations group to kind of show you that, this is example of we're using our GIS system to create some dashboards to help our distribution and metering crew track our hydrant repairs and maintenance. It kind of gives you a nice visual. We actually use this dashboard, to kind of track our plan and our operations. So I'm just sharing with you some of the things we're doing to optimize our operations, be more efficient. Could you go to the next? This is our CCTV. We put a camera in our sewer pipes to kind of get a condition assessment of what's actually happening inside. We're able to track. You see that, the locations there. If you looked at the left area, the left green bar area, you can see we've done 32 miles that have been televised. We have our contractor mileage, our in-house mileage, and our goal is almost, we're at 63% completion. Our goal is about 10% of the entire system should be televised annually. So
Color codes mean,
the pipe material,
for me?
the pipe material.
Okay.
And this is our lead service line replacement program. This is actually a front-facing dashboard that's available on our website. We're really doing well with getting rid of our lead service lines. We're around 200 remaining for a town our size. That's unheard of. I think Elgin is over 12,000, for example, remaining, and we're at 200. Okay. We just got notice that we received an SRF loan, as a state revolving loan fund with interest forgiveness. We're going to knock all these out next year, maybe over the next 2 years. We got $3.5 million. That should be enough to finish the last remaining 240 or so that you see there. And we're going to just knock them out. It's an interest-free loan. It's like free money. So
Does that include the lead pipe that goes into the residents' homes?
yeah, we replaced from the B box to the meter at our expense. That our program is pretty unique in that regard. What's also unique is that we've secured access agreements from, I think, almost 90% of the folks who have a less service line. We're working on the stragglers. Usually it's like, if it's a house that's a rental property that belongs to a blind trust or something like that, they're hard to track down because you got to get the owners to sign off on it, because the renters won't sign it. You know, they want the owner to sign it. Sometimes it's hard to track down some of these signatures. So we're working on the last few. We'll get there. But we're making really good progress. And we knocked about 65 out this year with our contract. And we're really glad that we're going to get this SRF loan interest-free, and we're going to knock it out.
This usually between the mains and the building, right?
Typically, most places are stopping at the B box, between the main and the B box, which is the public side of the service. And most communities are actually charging the residents to do the private side for the B box at the meter.
Okay.
We decided that to encourage participation, we're going to do all of it at our expense. It's worked out really well for us. We were really far ahead of the game because we were very proactive when we did our meter replacement program. That once we're in the house, we actually identified the service material. We were already there.
In the house.
Yeah, because we were in the house, replaced the meter.
Yeah.
And we were able to check out what material the service was coming in. So some towns are actually starting from scratch on this, which is why they have a big lift, and we're doing so well. So I'm really proud of our efforts here, and we're going to be lead free hopefully in the next 2 years.
So is our freshwater chemistry conducive to reducing lead carry through to
Yes,
citizens?
City of Chicago is who treats our water. They provide it to the DuPage Water Commission, and we buy from the Water Commission. Chicago puts in a polyphosphate, and then they just switched to an orthophosphate, which provides a coating inside the service line, which prevents the lead from leaching into the line. So thanks. One area of note, that number is actually 99 as of today. We've had 99 main distribution leaks repaired this year. This time last year, we had 55. So our numbers are up. I was asking my team what's going on, and a couple of things. I think these are actually good things. Our leak survey detection contractor is performing remarkably well. They're finding everything. The smallest leaks they're detecting, but we repair them. We've also installed acoustical listening devices on the valve stems in the distribution system so that we can listen for leaks at night. And we can determine the location of a leak to within 3 feet of accuracy. So that system is actually finding really small leaks as well, that historically we wouldn't have found for a long time until they surfaced.
So they made a big.
Correct, if it was a big leak. So I think that's part of the answer, but I think it's a good problem to have that we're getting after this. We still have the manpower, and as necessary, we bring in contractors to aid us as necessary, but our numbers are up. So.
For a good reason.
Well, you know,
When you think of it.
reliability is important. I'd rather find the leak when it's small because it's easier to repair than a big blowout. Right. That could cause property damage. So
Schedule.
you can.
I don't.
Absolutely. We actually let a few of these run for a few days because we were busy somewhere else, come in and schedule the repair. So. All right. So that's just the location of this. So that's the actual state report. You see the red numbers here, that is reflective that we're actually have more interruptions at this point over 12 months than the previous 12 months, which tracks with the increase that we've seen in water main repairs. So, while the numbers are worse, most of it's tied to water main repairs. But we are being more aggressive in repairing our hydrants and valves that are out of service. And we're scheduling those. But that also counts as an interruption. So we're increasing that program, make sure that our system is working as necessary. So improved maintenance and our ability to find more leaks, I think is driving some of these numbers to show that we're actually having a higher SADI result. But I think it's also a result of proactive maintenance on our part. So,
Estimates made of the amount of water leaking,
yes, I share that.
and more importantly, is there a dollar associated with
Yes.
that number?
Yeah, there is. Correct. So let's see here. To date, the gallons of water loss is 55,482,070 gallons. The non-revenue dollar loss to date is $309,589, an average of $3,127 per repair. So we do track, because if it leaks, we're not selling it to a customer, but we're buying it from our supplier, right? So that's non-revenue
$300,000 of lost water
so far. Yeah.
this year.
Yes. Now, we run the numbers where our leak detection survey team that we hired, we track their results and the repairs, and we do an estimated leakage calculation. And to show that by fixing the leak, what we stopped versus had to continue to run for the year, we've done that calculation to show that the investment in the leak detection survey pays for itself.
Yeah, that's kind of what you want to do, right?
Yeah, it's a good investment. So, all right, excellent. We'll keep moving on. What's the next one? Is Springbrook effluent. Good news here, we have no violations, no excursions. I did provide some updated reports because the month of July was left off from the packet, so I updated it here for you, so you can have a full report there. Like I said, nothing shocking here. Springbrook plant, despite all the construction, is still performing well. And we're meeting all regulatory requirements. We've had no excursions to date, so.
So what does each number mean? It's the milligrams of
That's
bad stuff?
millions of gallons per day, MGD.
Oh, okay.
That's right. What, this is their daily plant effluent numbers? Is that what this is,
Yeah.
or by hour or
Daily.
by day?
Day.
Okay. And red is low and green is high.
Yeah, typically we associate higher flows with precipitation. So typically with the rainfall, we get more inflow coming to the plant due to I&I leaks, cracks get into the system. So when it rains, we get more flow to the plant. Dry days, we get less flow to the plant. But then we kind of show you that we're still operating within our design average day parameters. That's all I have for that. The water financial packet on the website. Yeah, pull up the two dashboards on the finance dashboards. I think it was the Chrome. Yeah, so here's the revenue. If you look at the monthly budget versus projection, June, there was a bond issue. That was the big spike in revenue there. But more or less, we're tracking pretty tightly to projections. The August numbers we're slightly below projected is probably not right because we're not done with August yet. They haven't put all the billings in. So I would argue that there's still several batches of billings that haven't been processed in Munis yet. So I think we're going to be still on track for the year, which is good. The October spike is projections is the other bond issue we're going to do for the Springbrook project, which we'll get to in a moment. So on the revenue side, we're looking well. We're tracking really on target with our projections in our budget. So could you switch over to the expenditure one? So yeah, once again, our expenses are below projections. We're doing well. The biggest sort of misleading you to be careful is that the capital expenditures typically occur starting in March through October, most of it in the summer months because that's our construction season. So that's kind of a lagging indicator. We'll have we still have a lot of contracts out working and payments haven't come through yet. So we're going to be processing a lot more payments over the next several months. And we hold retainage and things of that nature. So the capital outlay is kind of a lagging indicator versus, if you did a straight line, budget versus each month, it doesn't track well because it's kind of condensed to like a much tighter season. So, but the purchase water, we're slightly under, purchase services were under, salaries and wages were slightly under, all good trends. So I think we're doing well on the expense side and tracking well on the revenue side. So budget wise, we're doing pretty well, is the point I'm making here. So things are going to plan. So that's all I got on these two. Mayor, unless there's any questions. Just a note, yeah, did you get to the memo? Yeah, that one there. Yeah, could you go down a little further to show the cash balance?
Sure.
Slide down a little bit more. Bottom of the page, I think. Next page. Yeah, right there. So perfect. Our cash balance is currently 5 times our target balance. Our target reserve balance is 30 days. We have over 155 days of cash on hand, which is good. But that's also part of our financing plan with our rate study. We have rates, cash, and debt as a component. So this is all part of the plan. So everything's tracking the way it's supposed to. So don't get too excited about that because we're going to be spending it down. But it's still good that it's working according to plan. So, and like I said, no shocks on the revenues expenditure side. Water supply, once again, we got through the peak of the summer months, no issue. Last year, we did have some pressure problems in the southwest part of town. We were able to manage that this summer pretty well. We are considering an additional feed point from the DuPage Water Commission as part of their extension of water to Montgomery, Yorkville, and Oswego. We are looking at maybe adding an additional feed point because that's the area of town where we need to solve some of the pressure problems. So,
And that was caused by the expansion or more people there or?
growth, yes.
Growth.
So more users, and it's in the common zone. And if we have prolonged periods of drought and heat, we can't have problems filling up the tanks at night. And the tanks help provide pressure right during the day. So if we don't get the levels we need in the tanks, bit of a pressure problem. So we're looking perhaps to find a way to push an additional 3 MGD into the system down there. We don't need more water. We just need more water there, right there. So overall, the water supply is fine. I just need a little bit of a push in that one location. So we're looking at ways to solve that, and there may be a solution for us there. I also included an email from the DuPage Water Commission. I know some of you have asked about the alternative water supply project that our supplier is considering. As you know, we buy our water from Chicago through the DuPage Water Commission. A few years ago, we signed our contract with the commission for 40 years, but the commission only re-upped for 15 years with Chicago because we're in negotiations for a better rate. We're asking for the same rate they're giving Joliet, and they're being resistant. So the commission is actually being very aggressive and is considering building their own water supply system. And they've taken steps to do that. I think Chicago is finally waking up and realizing that they're serious. The commission bought property in Northbrook at the price of $80 million to build a future water plant. As you see the picture, they're actually surveying the bottom of the lake bed, running intake. So yeah, they're doing the groundwork to build their own system. In parallel, they're negotiating with Chicago, and hopefully Chicago will figure it out, give us the rate, the proper wholesale rate that they gave Joliet. It's not that complicated. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. But like I said, the water supply side, we're fine. We didn't have any pressure problems this year, so yeah, all good. Unless you have any questions. So I think next we have the Springbrook presentation. Yes. Before I jump into the presentation, I'd like to introduce Cole Tifford. He is our technical specialist. He's one of the bright young minds down at Springbrook, helping us stay in compliance with regulations and helping us navigate $180 million of construction over the next 5 to 6 years. So we're glad to have Cole here. He's got a master's in biology and a class 1 wastewater license. So he's very talented, smart, skilled. And we were glad that we were able to steal him from Charleston, Illinois, come up here and work for us. So, and Cole helped me with this presentation today. So if you want to get in the weeds on some of the science, I have Cole here to help me out. So, all right, so we'll get going on the presentation. If you,
I'm having trouble bringing the presentation.
it's, no, it's the one to the left, the PowerPoint one, isn't it?
This one?
Yeah. It's locked up.
Locked up, yes.
Okay, well, that's why you always go old school, right? Paper. So glad I did that. So we'll start in.
Okay.
Oh, we got it. All right, just, could you hit, it's a PDF.
No, this is,
Oh, could you hit,
I'm not gonna put it in presentation mode because it will kick me out of this.
oh, okay, yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Just,
Just, could you maybe hit the arrow at the top to reduce the ribbon? Can you do that?
which one?
The ribbon? Or right, the, bottom,
Oh, okay.
the carrot, you see it?
Up,
Up, up, up, up.
right, right.
Yes, thanks, Jim, right there.
Oh, this here. Okay.
Could you just, hide the ribbon?
And you just wait till you try it on our TV, mister.
Up, did-
Let me see.
Nope, no, that's not it. Go back down. No, the other carrot, yeah, that one. So,
Is that good?
yes, fine. Great, so, could you go to the second slide? Great, so Board Member Fuller asked, if we could provide a little bit of an overview of what's going on in Springbrook. When he mentioned that, I realized that I don't think three of you had the opportunity to go through the rate study and CIP process that Brian and I did last year, where we kind of laid out a 10-year capital plan and went through how we're going to pay for it, talked about why we're doing what we're doing, and we just awarded a $62 million contract for construction and inspection services. And Jim was like, "What are y'all doing down there? That's a big project." So just kind of want to walk you through what we're doing and why we're doing it. So that's kind of the goal today. So you can go to the next slide.
Good after you get board turnover, you gotta explain everything.
Glad to do it. I think it's important that you guys understand what we're doing, because you'll hear the term Springbrook and phosphorus a million times over the next 5 years. So we want you to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And we're charging you a phosphorus charge on your bill. So you probably want to know what we're doing with it. So here's Springbrook, kind of like, we have currently an activated sludge aerobic digestion process built in the 70s, originally at 10 MGD. We've had expansions over the years. We're currently at 26.25 MGD for daily average flow. Get that right, Cole? And we can do up to 55 daily max flow hydraulically through the plant. But that's still not good enough for where we're at today. So could you go to the?
I ask a simple question.
Yeah.
Is that the only place we handle wastewater?
Yes.
That's the wastewater treatment
For
plant?
treatment, yeah. So we have collection and conveyance systems throughout the city where we have the sewer mains and the lift stations. And we also provide that service for Warrenville via an intergovernmental agreement. So we treat their wastewater. We collect it, send it to Springbrook, we charge them. They pay their proportional.
But this is the only place we do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The city used to have 3 separate smaller plants, and then this was all consolidated in the 70s to one facility.
So this is our current process here. I think the big takeaway is if you look at the split between the north and the south plant, it's currently 86% flow to the north plant and 14% flow to the south plant. With all the upgrades that we're going to be making, we're going to be 50-50 between the north and south plants after we're all said and done. And we're going to be updating the treatment process. And I'll get into that with you a little bit more in a couple of slides down. But before I do, I just want to show you there's another document I provided for you, which is kind of a little bit of a primer on what is the modified University of Cape Town system with integrated side stream enhanced biological phosphorus removal. That's the process we're moving to. And this is kind of like how it works. So just kind of take your time, read it. I didn't want to get in the weeds tonight because it's pretty technical, but if you do, I got Cole here and he can answer your questions. So if you can go to the next slide. There. Yeah. So this is the new process after we're said and done. We'll have a 50-50 split flow. Let's see, we have the updated treatment processes, the MUCT. We have a backup Allen system because you have to have a backup in case you go, in case you can't meet regulations with the MUCT. Also, we're going to be putting in cloth media disc filters as a CMVF. in case we have to even get a reduction in the phosphorus removal requirements to 0.1. That will ensure that's an additional barrier on removal so that we can be compliance should the regs get even stricter, which they probably will.
So is the objective of this project to remove phosphorus?
It is to do a couple of things. The overall project is the plant's old and the concrete was built in the 70s is falling apart. We had to replace it. We have capacity problems. We have a slide on that. But, town's grown since then. We got more bodies producing more waste. It's all going to Springbrook and we have to get rid of it. And so it's a problem. We're over our design max design now. So technically we're exceeding the design tolerances at Springbrook. Fortunately, we have really talented operators that are able to walk that balance between the current plant physics and what's coming in. We're able to sort of navigate that, but our window is short. We got to fix it. Okay, we can't keep doing that. So we're going to fix those issues. So it's capacity, it's regulatory requirements for phosphorus and eventually nitrogen. And so we have to be prepared. We have a permit now that requires us to do the phosphorus. So
are we exceeding phosphorus levels today?
we are not exceeding phosphorus levels. We have a requirement to get to a new level at a certain date. So, they say by 2030, we want you here. And that's our goal, is to be ready. So this is kind of a background, we have a permit with the state, the NPDES, that's a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. That's what that means. Essentially, anybody that dumps into a body of water is regulated or regulated. We dump into the DuPage River. So we have a permit, and those permits have a set of conditions. And we have to comply with those. It's the law. It's not an option. It's required. Our current permit expired in December of 2023. We've been in negotiations since then. It's usually a lengthy process. It's not unusual. We're close. The environmental action groups are being aggressive, not surprisingly. We're recommending a 0.5 mgd, a 0.5 mg per liter phosphorus limit. The environmental groups want us to be at 0.1. Our number is based on science. We did a study and analysis with the local watershed development groups and identified that if we are at 0.5, the stream hits its targets. So we don't need to go lower. But the environmental groups want us to go lower anyway, just because. So we're trying to base it on science. They just think lower is better. We're actually trying to there's a cost to that. So we're just trying to, what's the best cost benefit, right? For our ratepayers that actually impacts the street. Right?
So have they been delaying things? I mean, it says our permit is not finalized yet, so.
Delay is the wrong term. I say that it's just a negotiation. They've asked for more information. We provided it. They may lawyer up at some point. And that's just the process.
I'm trying to understand this. City's negotiating with an environmental group over the phosphorus level.
We're not negotiating with them. They're negotiating with the state on what our permit requirements should be. But we're in the same meetings. We're arguing for this. They're arguing for that. We're talking to the state regulator. And
so
we're making our case, they're making their case, and at some point, the state will decide. But right now, we're in that negotiation phase, data information phase. We provided our data. We've asked for their data.
Is that a local group?
I'll say Sierra Club. It's all the the usual suspects, I'd say.
Really similar to other issues that we're dealing with.
The current permit that we're operating under, even though it's expired, has a 1 milligram per liter limit requirement. We believe it will go down to 0.5. Pretty confident that's where we're going to end up. It's a new permit. But we're designing the plant to be able to go down to 0.1 with the cloth media disc filters if we need it down the line. So next slide, please.
I'm sorry, do you know what the nitrogen limit is?
We don't have one currently, right? No. But there probably will be one coming down the pike at some point. So we want to be prepared that our treatment process can remove phosphorus and nitrogen. So
The modified University of Cape Town system, while nitrogen isn't limited right now, does have the capability of nitrogen treatment inherent to the system.
So
So when you're saying nitrogen and phosphorus, you're talking about nitrates and phosphates, right?
Yes.
Okay.
next slide. So even though the flows to the plant have been decreasing because we've done such good job on the collection system, reducing the infiltration and inflow from rain events, groundwater. That's going down. That actually helped us not have to do this sooner, right? You know, if we did make these improvements to the collection system, we would have to have done this maybe a decade ago, sooner. So those investments delayed expansion. But despite the flows going down, next slide, population is increasing. Next slide. The loading to the plant is increasing. Not surprising. More bodies, more waste, all going to the plant. So we have to address that. So we've been studying this.
Charts are influent ammonia and I was just trying to read the axes.
Influent
You
BOD.
say the load is increasing. That's increasing the ammonia?
It's the pounds of ammonia.
Pounds of ammonia.
Yeah. And the BOD is also in pounds. Essentially, that's things in the waste stream that the bugs need the oxygen to remove, right?
Yeah, it's biochemical oxygen demand, it's BOD. That's basically the amount of energy in the system, usually in the form of carbon. So basically like food coming into the plant, what comes out of your waste that microbes can eat. We're trying to prevent that from getting to the river where it could cause more problems there. So
So that's the BOD.
the BOD removal is a key function of wastewater treatment.
So where we've been, we've been studying this issue for quite some time. We've done the biowood modeling, we've done pilot studies, we did the phosphorus optimization plan, we did a phosphorus feasibility study. We looked at our industrial customers, we've done a pretreatment survey, we've done a flow and loading evaluation. And then we decided, yeah, okay, we got some problems. We need to do a full facilities plan. That's the sort of the standard for our industry. It's sort of the top to bottom, soup to nuts evaluation of the facility. What do you need to do? It looks at everything. So we did one of those. And now that plan put together, it's actually like this thick. I'll bring it to the next meeting to show you. It's quite something. I can share you the PDF if you like, because I know you guys are science-minded individuals. You might enjoy reading that. But for most folks, it's a very big paperweight for most folks. If you go to the next slide, please. So what have we been doing for phosphorus? We've been doing quite a bit. We did some digestion improvements in 2008, filter rehabs in 2011. We did some grid improvements in 14. We added a biosolids tank improvements in 16. Screen improvements to the influent 2017. We got rid of the chlorine disinfection with UV light disinfection. That just went online last year. And we have a bunch of stuff under construction. And this, the South Plant improvements, Jim, that's the project you saw being awarded that night. That project for construction and construction phase services was $62 million. That one project by itself. So
It's $53 million.
it was 62 when you combine the construction plus the engineering for construction phase services. So that project was 62 of the South Plant. So we still have to do the North Plant. That's coming. It's under design right now. Next slide, please, Mayor. All right, so we completed the facilities plan. We did the asset evaluation. They walked through the plant. They looked at every pump. They looked at the concrete. They looked at the basins. What's going on? How does it look? What needs to be replaced? What's working well? What's not working well? And then we created plans. We showed you those plans last year as part of the rate study. So we wanted to kind of give you guys a quick overview of the Springbrook component here tonight. So the asset evaluation and condition assessment. We went through the plant. They looked at all the different assets and came up with a condition score. We actually did surprisingly well for a plant our age. I think the feedback we got from our consultant was, yeah, it's old, but it's well maintained. You got work to do, a lot of work to do, but it could be a whole lot worse, right? So that was good news.
I'm sure they see worse.
Oh, I'm sure. You go to the next slide. And also part of that is sort of the risk component, right? You know, every asset doesn't have the same risk if it fails, right? So we identify which assets have the highest risk, and those are being targeted first for replacement. So, you know, it's a very common asset management plan put together. You do the condition assessment, you do the risk assessment, and you prioritize around that. So this is the treatment process part here. The existing plant design, all the red is where we're currently exceeding the existing plant design today. We have problems. The facilities plan confirmed these problems. We knew these problems. We did the engineering, we did the modeling, and yep, we got problems. We got to fix them. It's not an option. It's not a wish list. It's a to-do list. We have to do these. So we're going to fix, you know, this and for the future. So next slide. Next one. So, you know, we put together a CIP. So, you know, the CIP, I mean, it's a big lift. I mean, it's $180 million total. What's driving those costs? It's over capacity. We still got some growth in the system expected here in Naperville. Not as much as we did in the 90s, but we still have some growth. We have Warrenville, who's our customer, is also growing as well, so we have to be able to accommodate that. You have aging infrastructure, the concrete's falling apart in some areas. I mean, it's 50 years old, you know, it's falling apart in areas.
So 60 million that was just recently approved at the 2 city council meetings ago, that's just 1/3 of the total that you're spending altogether.
We're doing a phased approach because the plant has to stay in operation 24/7. So we're tackling this in phases where we could bite off big chunks and maintain operations and compliance with the regulations. So we have to do it in a phased approach. So we're doing it in a, you know, systematic approach. We got some of the best minds in the country with our consulting engineers, phasing this out, how to do it. We've been lucky. We have good contractors as well on site working with us, and we got lucky, I believe, that the current contractor for the return excavated sludge also got the South Plant project, and they're overlapping a little bit. So coordination issues much better than we had 2 contractors.
So is the 60 that was just approved the first of 3 of those, or are we in the middle or at the end?
We'll show you. We have a slide for that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So here it is. So we did the UV disinfection first. That was 8.3 million. We did the inflow and pump station, 7.3 million. The South Plant grit and RAS, that's underway. That's 14.1 million. And the South Plant, that's just construction only. That was just awarded. That Jim, that's the one at the meeting you're at. That's the South Plant. The North Plant project is in design now. We have a meeting with the consulting engineers to review the 90% plan set, to get that ready for bidding. And then down the line, we will need to do the cloth media disc filters. We may have some leeway there, but we want to be prepared, at least have the design ready to go. So
that's that 59.3 was the 60 from 2 city council meetings ago.
So the 60.2 was that included the construction plus the inspection. That number there is just the construction. So the inspection phase was like 2 million.
So you have another 80 million to go of requests of the city council.
So the fact that we have our own water and wastewater, because of the tight inspection process and maintenance, puts this city in a better spot for quality of water.
Yeah, I mean, on the drinking water side, you know, one, we have a great source like Michigan.
Right. But that doesn't guarantee anything.
No, you still have to maintain the system, right? So we're fortunate that our supplier, the DuPage Water Commission, is well run, and we have a very redundant water supply system coming in. We have 7 feed points. I mean, that's unheard of, right? You know, we're very lucky. And the local system that we maintain is well managed, well maintained. We're tackling the water main replacement piece. I think that was the one lagging part, you know, water supply, meters, that was good. Where we were lagging was the pipe in the ground component, and we're catching up on that now. So the drinking water side, we have a high level of service. We want to maintain that high level of service. The water quality is excellent. It's the best in the region. And actually our cost per gallon is also some of the best in the region too. We are very competitive compared to other Lake Michigan water communities as well. So we do it at a high level and cheaper than most.
Who would do it if we didn't own this?
Illinois American, it could be a private system. And there are some private water companies
How do they
that
rate compared to us?
hire because it is a profit mode to build it as well.
Well, I mean, rate as far as quality.
It depends. I mean, some systems are well run. Typically, what happens is they buy a system and it goes well for a while, but then there's maintenance concerns and then rates go up. There's a pushback and there's all kinds of.
Right.
So,
Right.
um,
We're closer to the situation as we are with electric.
with this body and the city council with direct oversight of both utilities for on the water and wastewater side, and having our own plant for wastewater, we're in the driver's seat on what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, as opposed to having it.
Yes, that's probably the biggest answer.
Now, we don't have our own water treatment facility. Chicago does that for us.
Right.
We do have our wells as a backup system and we do have some treatment there. But that's a backup system.
We've never had to do that. That's why.
We have not had to run the wells for a very long time. We still run them because we have to maintain them.
Maintain it.
Yeah, but we have never had to put them in service for quite some time. So,
Well, it's just good to advertise the reason why we own our utilities. Because I think people need to understand there's an option here as far as what happens to maintenance, investment, and just being able to make decisions, say this is the best thing financially, fiduciary wise, and that's why you're doing it in phases. Instead of letting things go, and then now we have a big problem, and now either we get sick or we're gonna drink somebody else's water, bottled water.
I mean, some communities are willing to live with, water main breaks, because it keeps rates down, but we have a high level of service here. And,
Well, it's our own, right, our own
and
city.
so we kind of decide, we set the service level standard. You guys tell us, and then Brian and I come up with the plans to make it happen, right? That's kind of how this works.
Another reason why we're so far ahead and with the lead abatement.
Well, we were lucky too that our forefathers on the city council in the 1960s banned lead services. 26 years before the federal government banned it, most towns were putting in lead services up to the very end, up to the last day. We banned this practice in the 1960s. So we were actually proactive in that regard, but but still, we've been taking them out as we come across them.
Right.
And most towns haven't.
Right, right. That's the point.
So like the North Plant aeration improvement. So, there's a whole series of things that we got to do for treatments. We have to change our treatment process to match the new regulatory requirements for phosphorus. What we're doing won't be our current process. So we're going to be making some tweaks to that, and that requires some changes to how the plant works and how it's designed, the tankage and everything else, how it's built. So we're going to be working through that process here. Could you go to the next one? This is the return activated sludge and grit project. That's recent. That's like probably a week old.
That's what it looks like right now.
So that's happening right now. So good night, Councilman. So we're in the thick of it right now. So we had a plan. We're executing the plan, and we're pursuing it to the end. So every community has a signature influence, right? They're unique to each community. They're all different, right? So the challenge is to find the right treatment process that matches with what you have coming into the plant. Now, on the drinking water side, it's a lot different. You just run it through filtration, it pretty much works. But not in wastewater, it's a little bit of science and magic. There's a little bit of that going on here. So we brought in some smart folks and we identified a process that will meet our requirements going forward. So next slide. So, Jim, you asked that question about, what alternatives were examined at our plants going forward. We did. We looked at 5 different alternatives. And we decided to go with MUCT with the side stream injection. And that had the lowest total cost of ownership or the total present value and met the requirements that we need to meet. So that's the plan we're going with. We've done pilot testing to make sure that that process is going to work. We had Blackie Beach come in, do the pilot testing, and yeah, it's going to work. So we're really confident that the process that we're selecting, that we're building, matches our influent, and it's going to work and meet the requirements. Next slide. So this is, like the influent pump station. This is just replacing old pumps. They weren't working well. They were, had lost their, effectiveness, and now they're being replaced. While we're there, we're doing other things too. We're replacing it's rotation controls, replacing some, other issues, making it more safe. We're adding some safety features as well. We're there, we're fixing it, and this is actually the first part of the plan where it all comes in and it's got to go through the pump station. So if that's not right, nothing downstream is right. So we're getting that done right. So this is kind of what's going on now and going forward. So we're in design engineering for the North plant. The staff will be working with the consultants on a 90% review of the current plans. Get that ready for bidding. Biosolids holding tank phase 2 is under construction. South plant, RAS and grid, and the South plant upgrades are under construction. Those filters that we mentioned, the cloth media disc filters, will be added later, maybe sooner if the permit requirements change, get more stringent. There's always pressure for the regulators to go low, and we know that. So that could change. 0.5 is our goal. We think we're going to get 0.5 for now, but those permits every 5 years get redone. So it could be 0.1 5 years from now.
So how many facilities, because they're not all municipalities, it's what facility, are in compliance now?
I mean,
Compared to us.
it depends. I mean, some communities have, court ordered mandated improvements to make where they're not in compliance.
Yeah, so they're not in compliance.
Correct. So
Compliance, and we're going through this construction. But so there's a lot of,
yeah,
I guess, majority of them.
I think the majority are in compliance. There are some communities that are in a tough spot. I mean, I think Elmhurst, for example, has a combined sewer system where the stormwater and the sanitary sewer are the same system. And they have to break that apart into two systems. It's very expensive. So, we're lucky we don't have that problem, right? So some communities have the same requirements and have a much tougher road to hoe in some regards.
Specs that you say that we're kind of negotiating state environmentalists, are those specs specific just for Naperville, or are these statewide specs that everybody has?
Each facility will have its own permit. So
Each facility.
yeah. So a lot of that would be this, there's a lot that's the same, that's boilerplate, but there's gonna be something that's unique to us.
So the 1 milligram per liter in 2030 on some of the old permits was kind of the standard for almost all facilities in the future.
There's a starting point.
And that 1 milligram per liter, I believe a majority of facilities already met those requirements. But again, your influent characteristics are different everywhere you are. So sometimes this plant specifics changed to where basically the state EPA says we need these limits lower. If you're dumping into an impacted stream system that already has nutrient loading issues. Part of the old permits, most facilities that were in these waterways that were impacted had to go through what was called a nutrient removal or nutrient assessment process. So Naperville did a nutrient implementation plan or NIP. Yeah, I did a NARP at my old plant.
NIP and NARP, they're acronyms.
But we would sample basically the waterways that our effluent goes into, upstream, downstream, see what kind of impacts we were having on those systems. So those studies would go into the state's decision as to what limits they want to set for each individual facility.
So we're part of the, the local DuPage watershed groups. So we actually pay a fee to that group. We help support it. And they've actually done in-stream improvements. They've removed some dams, they've done some other improvements that actually has done a tremendous amount of improvement to the aquatic life in the streams. So we're showing that, you don't need to put all the burden on us at the plant, we could probably 0.5 is still good enough based on the science. And we've shown the science, we've done the testing, the modeling to show that in Naperville, at our facility, at 0.5, the stream is good to go. So why go lower?
Who's at the table for Naperville?
We have a team, Joe Slevny, my deputy director. He's, our expert at the plant and on the regulations. I'm involved time to time, especially on the big decisions. And we have partners with the local watershed development groups and their consultants. And we may be lowering her up to at some point with bringing in environmental lawyers if this continues on.
Is that a specialist lawyer? Because of the fact that the state is not responding or delaying or?
That's not our issue. I mean, that's not a problem for us because we still operate under the same permit.
Right.
The one that's expired, which is one,
Right.
so
Right.
we're okay with that. But our worry is going to 0.1 sooner than necessary.
Yeah.
It's just expensive. And there's no scientific improvement benefit to the stream.
Right.
So why would you do that?
Make someone feel good.
I think that's some of it.
So you know that each facility has different limits?
Yes.
They can.
There are some hard set standards from the federal government as to these NPDES permits are federally permitted, but done through your regional, so your state EPA. So like you have to reach like 85% BOD removal of standards. You've got some standard implications, but some of these specific nutrient removal requirements are specific just to that facility. And you could have facilities, miles apart, just a little bit there.
Because that stream they discharge into could be in bad shape. And another stream, another plant, the stream could be in good condition. So they want to have different standards based on.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at is why are there different
That's
limits on?
Location.
Okay.
We're showing at our location, based on the science, 0.5 we think is reasonable. We're sticking to our guns, so. And this is the phosphorus, we're trying to get us
Is
those.
the state kind of the judge between the Sierra Club and your group of people, or is the state kind of
We
pushing?
think, they're reasonable. They've been very reasonable historically with us and, they're engineers and, they kind of think like engineers and, so we present the data like engineers would like it. And we do studies to show the science but, they get political pressure, that's how the system works. So,
Does Region 5 get involved at all?
I
don't know how involved they are.
I don't think that
hear
much.
much.
They've delegated it more.
Yeah, a lot of it's delegated to the state specifically.
Right. Okay, yeah, you go to the next slide. So in 2017, we did a feasibility study. We kind of did like a cost analysis to hit these different limits for phosphorus, right? What would it cost? Just a reminder, these costs are, in 2019 dollars, they have not been inflation adjusted to match 2025 dollars. So while those dollars are there, we think, if you adjust it for inflation, 8 years of additional inflation needs to be much higher. So we've been collecting a surcharge on your bill for phosphorus. We've been collecting that. It's been collecting about 1.2 million a year now. Pretty steady, pretty reliable. If you go to the next slide, you can see the current balance. We're at just under 24 million.
Yep.
Our goal was to get to 25 and we will by the end of this year, get to 25 million. Back when we set this up, 25 million was 50% of the cost. That's not really the cost today, but because we're doing other things too. It's not just phosphorus we're doing the capacity improvements and everything else. So the 180 million is all in, which includes phosphorus. So this kind of gives you a sense for what the phosphorus piece is probably going to cost us. Yeah, so this is the plan.
Okay, so
Just gotta go ahead. We're good. So, yeah, I know a question that Jim had was sort of like, coming from the private sector, government's kind of a little strange on the procurement side of things, how it works. And just typically for these larger projects, because they're so specialized, the processes that we have to use for compliance, that we bring in consultants. Okay. We have a short list of consulting firms that we pre-selected on merit to do work for us. So we have these different projects. We issue a statement of work, send it to the short list. They give us cost proposals and their resume of other projects that they've done that are related to what we're asking for. We score them and we award them a design contract. They design it, we're involved, staff reviews it. Then we go out to bid and we get construction pricing. Then we sign a construction contract. Council awards a contract for a certain dollar amount plus a contingency. For larger contracts is what, 3%, Brian, typically for large contracts? So we got the basic contract price plus 3% contingency. And then that's kind of our what we work within price wise. If we need more money, we do a change order, we come back, we ask council for approval for a change order, we tell them why. And we tell them the reasons why we need a change order. That usually, you know, they're very agreeable, we get what we need. But the whole process along the way on the construction side is also very rigorous. You know, the contractor submits a schedule of values, they submit a construction schedule, they submit shop drawings to verify that what they're buying is in compliance with the specifications. You know, they put a shop drawing on, you know, if they want to do a manufacturing piece, a component that they're going to build themselves that actually matches the requirements and specifications. And our engineers review all those, approve them, they build. They deliver a quantity to the site, we measure it, we get tickets from like concrete trucks, we get tickets. So there's a schedule of values and unit pricing. If it's 1,000 yards and they only put in 800 yards, we only pay for 800, right? So we measure the quantities as well. So there's a lot of safeguards in place. And I was talking to Jim about those protections to our customer on price, right? We have a plan set, we have a plan, we have construction drawings. We go through a detailed analysis to make sure what's delivered and built on site is in compliance. We only pay for what's installed, and we have a process. And we hold back retainage 10% on every payment as leverage later down the line for the contractor to get work done. So we have a lot of protections in place. That's just kind of like on the government side, is a little, I guess, unique to what Jim's experience was in the private sector. So I kind of want to walk through, it's probably similar for Brian's projects as well. It's design, bid, build. Or maybe it's more design build in the private sector. So I think I try to address all those questions. Jim, did you have any other?
You're pretty comprehensive. I just, you know, kind of the general theme as you maybe gotten to know me over the last 8 months is cost, you know.
Yes.
How are we protecting the rate payers or the water bill payers or the taxpayers' money? And it sounds like you got a pretty comprehensive program, especially the last couple of minutes that you described there of what you do. Where I came from, we called it value engineering, where we'd sit down with a whole team of engineers, even the operators from the plant, would sit down in these meetings and look through the scope of work and see, well, do we really need that? Can we cut this back? You know, is there a way to do this less expensively? And that usually contributed some percentage of cost reduction based upon or versus the initial estimate. They're usually pretty successful. It sounds like you do that.
Yeah, we're doing it right now with the South plant. A good example is, you know, because we're pretty far along on the return activated sludge project, grit removal project. That some of our design assumptions for the South plant, after looking at it again, may have been a little bit too belt to suspenders, right? A little bit too conservative. And I think that we're looking at ways to reduce some concrete wall thickness, other things that would reduce price. So we're going through that analysis now, and we'll go to the contractor and say, we want to reduce the wall thickness from 2 feet to 18 inches. What's the reduction in price? So and they actually come to us too. Contractors say, hey, we could do this way, or if we use this substitute product, I think we're doing that with grout, for example. There's a grout issue that a grout that's really, our spec was very expensive. They're like, we can use a pea gravel grout. It's a lot cheaper. It's the same result. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe we should make that change. So we work with the contractor on savings as well. So it's a very rigorous process. You know, if you have a good contractor, you work with them because they want to get paid, they want to get done, they want to get out of here, right? So typically, it's a two-way street.
Are there industry benchmarks on these types of projects where you can compare yourself against other facilities that are somewhat similar that have been built
Yeah, I mean,
elsewhere?
that's how they do the, when they do the cost estimating as part of the design, each plan set we get 30, 60, and 90, we get a cost opinion from the engineer. And, our engineers have projects all over the country, not just Chicagoland. CDN Smith is an international firm, and Donahue Smith is a large regional firm. So they got projects going everywhere. So they're comparing costs from Kansas City, comparing costs, from, Nashville projects, and they have these, estimators that have the shared data set. And they're like, okay, for the Chicago region, this is the price we want to use for these projects based on the Chicago market and inflation increases. So it's a pretty scientifically and rigorous cost estimating program.
Is this all union labor?
We have a responsible bidders ordinance that would favor a union environment for our contractors. As long as you can show that you have an apprenticeship program and some other things related to that. You don't have to be a union shop, but typically union shops already have those things in place. But typically the larger projects, you'll see most of the sub contractors are union shop.
Primarily union.
Well, because it's prevailing wage, which is union scale anyway, right? So we're government, so we pay prevailing wage, which is also union scale. So it's very typical that a lot of the subs are union shops and outfits.
Any other questions? Yes.
So you mentioned that you had Black and Beach do a pilot plant study. So they did the pilot plant study on this selected option? Because I know you had a bunch of alternatives.
Correct. So, so the side stream injection basically is part of the MUCT. It enhances our influence because we have a low carbon into the plant.
Okay.
So by doing the fermentation, the side stream injection and fermentation, it actually increases the volatile fatty acids. Am I getting that? See, I'm getting it right. And which actually allows the phosphorus organisms to operate more efficiently. So our influent is low in carbon coming in. So the side stream injection helps boost those microorganisms in their removal of phosphorus.
It's a way to make short chain fatty acids. These microbes prefer for their metabolism.
So this has commercially been pretty well established as well, this technology.
It's a tried and true technology.
Yeah, this methodology is pretty much the modern standard for an activated sludge plant.
Okay. And then I know you looked at these other options as well. Looks like what our specific need was ended up dictating why you ended up, I know it's got the lowest present worth as well, but.
Yeah, it was a win-win because we knew it was a tried and true technology and also had the lowest total present worth. So we're like, that's the one we're going.
Okay.
Now, I mean, Black and Beach, they're a very innovative company and they have some other ideas, to be cutting edge. And we're like, we don't want to be the Ferrari. We want to be the Chevy. Okay. That's just how we do things here. Has to work. All right. We don't want to be, too far on the cutting edge and get too far out over our skis. We want a true system that we know works. And this is what we're doing.
Yeah, your trophy is the same size at the end of the game.
Well, if you're non-compliant, you don't get the benefit of, hey, you did something innovative. Yeah, but you're you're fine.
That's
For being non-compliant. That's all I got. Sorry to take up so much of your time, but I'm glad we did. I know the new members of the board.
No apologies. The PUAB specializes in long meetings.
As of late.
And we appreciate it because the time that you do, all of you, is not only important, but time consuming and difficult. And so we don't want to shortchange any of that. Thank you very much.
And tours are available before the weather turns. We should get you guys down to the plant if you haven't been already for the tours. So great.
Come down for a tour, show you around the plant,
Oh,
show
that'd
you
be
all the
great.
processes. We've got coming.
And you'll get the PowerPoint digital, and I also send you the facilities plan document because I know you're a science guy. The facilities plan, the whole document.
He loves to read them to see how they turn out. Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to accept the final reports that the water? The motion for that? So moved. And do I hear a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, then, all in favor of receiving it? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? There. Do I hear, any other comments from the, board? UAB? Prior to, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Second? In discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Both directors and everybody, the whole.
Yeah. Even when nuclear waste, I think something like this.
Rain gauge, I don't know the water, so who does do the rain gauge?
Does that help the storm water system?
Yeah, it's all
good.
There's just one decided, guys.
Over your rest.